Okay. Woo. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to open the FY20 budget hearing, Neshoba Regional School District budget hearing, and then calling that to order at 6 o'clock. And then once we get through the budget hearing, we'll go into our regular open meeting. So what is a budget hearing? It's an opportunity for the school district and community to understand and hear and ask questions about the budget. The superintendent will present it, so let's let her get through the presentation. And then once she's had a chance to do that, we'll take any and all questions from anybody in the community that has any. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you. So we're gonna start just going through some of the basic things. It's not showing up very bright tonight, is it?
I don't know why it's doing that.
Oops. Yeah. I'm not sure how it's televising either. I'm just gonna start.
Yeah,
That's it, perfect.
Yeah, but you have to keep unplugging it and plugging it back in again.
Oh, really? Oh, that's,
I don't know what's going on.
So I'll go through this quickly because I know that most everyone around the table has already seen all of this information, so there's nothing new to bring to you right at this point in time. So I'm just going to go through it quickly. Our goal always, the budget, the Neshoba Regional School District seeks to continue to provide outstanding educational and instructional delivery within responsible fiscal parameters. The considerations that we consistently keep at the forefront is that we try very hard to provide level services where possible, K through 12. This year I think we did a really good job of that. The contractual obligations, I think sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle, but that takes up more than the fair share of the budget. Is just our contractual obligations. The different unions, the different contracts that we've got out there, that takes up about 80% of our total budget. Continued initiative implementation, for example, the literacy initiative that we started a couple of years ago. We're in year 4 now of 5 years. We want to see that through to fruition. So that, for example, is one that we would consider. Staffing recommendations, of course, the principals put forward. You've already seen that, but you also know that we've cut away a lot of that as well. Moving forward, the stakeholder involvement, of course, school committee is heavily involved, our district administration is heavily involved, and we talk, of course, with the town administrators on a regular basis, depending on where we're at in the process. We start that kind of talk, to be honest with you, with the town administrators in December, when your first number is being readied. So that they're involved right throughout. This year, probably Dawn and I have had more communication back and forth than we would normally have during the season, but Bolton was in a different position this year than other districts. Last year, I had more contact with Orlando. So it just really kind of depends. Our budget in FY19 was the 54 million, FY20 the 55.8. Right now it sits at basically an increase of 3.31%. Keep in mind though, over the page when you take a look at the assessments, even though our budget might be 3-point-something%, that's not how it works in terms of the communities. And I just want to mention a couple of quick things here again. The assessment numbers are not something that the school district comes up with. Those are numbers that we receive from the state. We generally get them through the cherry sheets, and we plug those in, and then of course the sheet that we have here is formulaically driven as well. So we plug those numbers in. This year Bolton saw a bit of an uptick. If you were to go on to the DESE website, there's some data in there that you can see as to why. And one of the key reasons why Bolton was higher this year is because their income level was actually higher this year. Stowe's went down a little bit and Bolton's went up substantially, and that was one of the reasons why there's the large differential now for Bolton, which has created a bit of a different issue for Bolton. So the assessments right now, as they stand tonight, are sitting at 4.99 for Bolton. Lancaster's at 3.31. Stowe is minus 0.01. So that's where it sits as of tonight. Now I would tell you, and I've shared this already with the chair, that we will probably still do a little bit of tweaking between now and the final meeting. So I don't expect it to be 1% or anything like that, but I still suspect that we've got probably around 100,000 or so, somewhere in there, that we're still looking at, that we've just identified as unidentified cuts right now. Not cuts, but just changes that we're going to make to the overall ask. Finally, as we just move into the priorities, the superintendent's budget priorities, the continuing priorities were the safety. You hear me talk about that all the time. That's going to continue forward next year. The early literacy, as we start to wrap that project up. The science standards, you're going to hear about STEM scopes tonight. The math, the ongoing textbook and coursework implementation, and the unit building that's continuing to work with that. Social studies, there's a brand new review that's out, so you're going to see that probably start to come up probably for the next at least 2 years as in supporting of the changes that have been made with the frameworks at the state level, so we'll be having to make curriculum changes here. There's a continued focus for us on the academic support district-wide. We can't lose sight of the SOI resubmission. Facilities, you know that we have ongoing efforts district-wide with our facilities. Social emotional learning initiatives, you're gonna see us play that out more over the next 2 years. You know that this year we had more of a technology focus. The next 2 years you're going to see us take more of a place more of a focus on social emotional learning initiatives. That's going to include training for staff, training for administrators, and we're excited about the work moving forward in that area. What we have still included as of tonight, but I say this will still, we'll potentially still see some changes here. At RHS right now, still the business teacher to increase to the 0.8 to the 1 FTE. The science teacher change. The dean of students still is in there at center school. The intervention-based instructional assistant at K-1 is still in there. At Hale School, I mentioned to you last time that I thought I'd probably end up putting that assistant principal position back in. So tonight it's in there as well as the literacy specialist, the health services, the nurse at NRHS, and the floating nurse. Remember I said that those were non-negotiables because we have to have that. Special education, we have to have that. The technology support is still in there for the request that they had as well. So that's a broad overview. You've seen a lot of the details, but tonight is really to give the broad overview, and that's kind of where we've landed as of tonight. This is the opportunity for the public to ask questions if there are any further questions from the public. We'll be doing, the school committee itself, remember, we'll be doing a budget section tonight, and we'll give you the update. So you'll have plenty of time for the school committee to have additional discussion tonight.
Do we have any questions from the community? Any comments? Colin, you got anything?
No.
No? All right, then with that, we'll, I need someone to close the FY20 public budget hearing.
I move to close the FY20 budget hearing.
I'm calling that to, at 6:08. Thank you. Linda, thank you, by the way. All right, so now we're gonna open our open meeting, our public meeting, the February 27, 2019 regular.
Sorry.
You what? Oh, I need to do a roll call.
No, I need a second.
Oh,
for the regular
I'm
vote.
sorry. I'm just kind of running through this. All those in favor? Okay, Lynn, are you with us?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Elisa.
Oh, yeah,
Elise
seconded
seconded
it,
seconded,
right,
yeah.
we're all set, thanks. Okay, regular school committee meeting opening at 6:09, okay. Do we have any citizens' comments for any of the agenda items on the agenda tonight?
I have a couple of questions.
Mm,
Can I have
For the budget?
Yes.
Oh.
But it was,
That's
it's
a-
okay.
Why don't you use your citizens' comments to make a statement, and then when we get to the budget portion, maybe it will be addressed in some of the discussion points.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So frame it as a comment?
Just whatever you want to say. It's your 3 minutes, have at it.
Okay, all right. I just had, so just a couple questions, like I said.
What's your name and your job?
Elizabeth, what's my name? Is that what she said? Elizabeth Davis Edwards.
In Bolton.
In Bolton.
Tonight's one of those nights.
Yeah. Sorry. So, so the questions that I have are, first, I'm curious as to why we're asking for 3 assistant administrators to the principal, when we've always had 2. And what the reasoning is behind that, I'm assuming we'll be getting to that anyway. And the second question is whether or not costs for litigation have increased, and they're increasing this year, and if so, how much and why?
Good questions. Okay, thank you, Miss Edwards, and I hope you stay with us.
I would be here till 7.
Till 7? Okay, let's move.
We might be able to get there.
Okay, let's move. I only have one update for, are there any other citizens' comments? I didn't think so, but that was a good one. To the policy personnel subcommittee, could you get the superintendent's evaluation started sooner, like as soon as the budget is over, because the current sitting committee really should provide the evaluation?
So originally, we had identified April 10th as the workshop for helping people get started with it. Do you want it at the last meeting in March?
No, because I'm traveling. Sorry.
So about you.
April, well, you can do it without me, and then you get to put it all together.
No, but when I looked at last year's time frame, it's approximately the same. So the idea is that we give people the information on the 10th. Dorothy may or may not be able to do a workshop on the 10th, but I'm comfortable doing a workshop to get folks started. And then last year we gave people
2 weeks.
2 weeks to submit their reports to you, and then I think,
I did it in a week.
yeah, so we can work on that timeline. But we can adjust it. I can be prepared to adjust it. We have a PSC meeting coming up on Wednesday. We're still working on some documents for the school committee manual, but just let me know what you want to do and we'll make it work.
So why don't we talk to the group, but thanks, that's great.
Okay.
So Alita, can you tell me when our meeting is in, I don't have the calendar in front of me, in May?
May is the 8th, and then the 22nd will be a new committee.
So we have to have it done by the 8th. And that should work.
It could work. A couple of ideas. If you want to put the workshop before the March 27th meeting, that would give people a little bit more time. It would.
That's a good
You would
idea.
have to give us your self-evaluation by then. But I could set up all the documents, and so if we could schedule an evaluation workshop from 5 to 6 on the 27th,
That sounds
and then work from that. The other thing, and I know that this happens in some towns, if for whatever reason the schedule gets messed up, then the people that have contributed to the evaluation come back to the meeting where the evaluation is put. So there's just a couple of options if you want to consider them. That's it. Let me know what you want to do.
I think if we had 2 weeks for everyone from the time that they do their, because 2 weeks is more than enough. And it's a
Right, and I
pretty
think
easy system to get
We've
through.
refined it so that
Yeah.
it's more focused.
Yeah, that'll work.
So,
Okay, I just
so-
wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page
So
and
we're
know what
gonna
the
do an
expectations are.
eval workshop on 3/27 from 5 to 6.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay.
Is everybody good with that? Okay.
You're gonna run that?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Student representative report. Mr. Delisle.
Sorry, I gotta sign in.
Thank you.
Alright, so we'll start off with sports as usual. Neshoba Athletics have shown some great success over the winter season for many of our teams. Our girls basketball team finished their regular season with a record of 17-3 and is pushing through playoffs now with their quarterfinal game against Medfield tomorrow night at Neshoba. The boys JV hockey team unfortunately lost their championship game, but had a great season leading up to it. Many of Neshoba's swimmers did well at the All-State meet, where several school records were broken. We also had one runner, Alexandra Betez, who qualified for All-States in the 1,000-meter indoor track event. She finished 12th place overall. Brevin Casella came in first place in his division at the All-State wrestling meet last weekend. Neshoba will soon be hosting its annual intramural volleyball tournament, sponsored by the girls volleyball team and Relay for Life. Students and teachers will make teams and compete in the week-long competition to see who comes out on top. For arts, the spring musical is almost here. Performances for Mary Poppins start on March 15th, and they run that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The band and choir students recently returned from their Disney trip, where they performed at the park, took part in interactive music and movie activities, and of course, went on all the rides. The high school jazz bands will be performing at the MAJE Jazz Competition next Wednesday, March 6th. For upcoming events, the Neshoba DECA teams will be competing in the state's competition in Boston from March 7th to March 9th. Here they will present their business-related projects to real business professionals who will determine whether they move on to the national competition in Orlando, Florida. And Neshoba's EMTs have been working hard on their upcoming blood drive at the high school on March 14th. They hope to raise money from the blood donations for their EMT scholarships through the Red Cross. That's what I have.
Are you good? Any questions for Colin? No? Are you done skiing for the year?
I think so.
All right. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate that. Superintendent's report, please.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, I've got a couple quickly to go over, and then our Assistant Superintendent McGuire will go through a couple. Budget meetings for us continue. At this time of year, we're constantly in budget cycle all through just about every day. From morning to night, we're meeting about it, tweaking it, and trying to get it to where we think it should be. We're also starting to meet with our towns. Last night we met with Bolton. Bolton was fabulous. I was really, really pleased with the questions that they asked last night. It was great. We'll be meeting with both Stowe and Lancaster in the next week, so just so that that's out there, that you're aware of that. Generally, we meet with the FinCom, but I think that we've got I think we've got a Stowe meeting as well for the Board of Selectmen. So I'm not sure.
I don't know about the FinCom.
Okay.
Next Tuesday.
We'll just do a quick check on that. So, just to let you know that we're going around and having those meetings. And this year I'd like to go to Lancaster as well, so. Aspet Valley Collaborative, just the annual audit, I think it was included in your package, so I just wanted to point that out for you. March 21st at 6:30, we've talked about this before, Ruth Potato, is that her name? Is a very well-known physician who's going to be coming in and doing a student and parent session, because really students are invited to attend as well. We've got some, and we're offering these to you tonight as well, so that you can hopefully join us as well that evening. It's a night to talk, it's entitled a community conversation about opioids, RX drugs, and youth in general. I'm sure vaping will come up at that point in time as well. So feel free to take a quick peek at that, and feel free to attend that evening if you have the availability. That's been planned for quite a few months, so we're really excited about that night. And I'll turn you over to Todd.
Sure. In addition, in terms of outreach, we're also offering, the district is also offering 2 mental health awareness first aid programming for members of our community. If you recall, we identified that we've done a lot of training with our administration and our teachers in the district before we started the school year, so a lot of our administration have had this training. We're going to be offering this training to members of the community, 2 sessions that'll take place from 8:30 to 12:30 on Saturday, April 27th, and Saturday, May 4th, 2019 in the Neshoba Regional High School Media Center. For more information, you can check out the web pages. We will have a flyer on the mental health first aid on all of our web pages, and we also have 2 instructors that are in the district, Diana Durr and Katie Abrazese, who work at our high school, who will be offering the training to community members. And there's another flyer going around on that one as well.
How do we get this information out to parents?
It's all, we just said it's on our website as well, and all the principals are posting it as well.
Good.
So, yeah,
Awesome.
I think it's gotten quite a bit of,
Do you put it in do you folks put it in your newsletters? Awesome, thanks.
And how are you presenting this? I mean,
They're presenting it.
I know that, but I mean,
you don't have to have a youth with mental health issues or drug addictions to go to these.
No, nope.
And so these are just for the community to recognize it and understand what they're looking at.
It's like
and
an
engage it.
education and information sessions, really what it is.
But everything that we've seen from Emerson and everything has all said that these are all community issues. And,
That's why they're getting that's why they're letting the parents know, right?
but this is almost like SPED. I mean, SPED is for everybody also. I mean, it isn't just for SPED people, SPED kids.
No, it's for anyone who's interested.
Right, and so.
Who should take it? Read the who should take it. Parents, people who work with youth, anybody who wants to come can come. What are you looking for?
Attendance.
What are you looking for about attendance? Are you
Well, there's almost a stigma, like with SPED. I mean, SPED is some really wonderful programs that can be put towards anything and anybody. It doesn't matter what level they're at or whatever. But nobody goes because, or the turnout isn't as
because
great as it should be because of the title. And I'm just wondering if there's another way to frame this, to let people know that this is a community problem and a community issue, and we're not saying that you have this problem, but you should recognize it.
So maybe, here's something, and maybe this will help. I'm gonna break rank here. Ann Needle, do you think you guys could put an announcement in the paper about this?
Yeah, you know, they send me the flyer
Yeah.
electronically.
You know what?
Start there, because I was already.
Can you
putting
hand these
down-
both to,
Yeah.
just give her those?
If I can put it at least on the calendar, I'm gonna talk to Cindy about
If you
storage.
would, that would be really great.
But I can't guarantee anything. We don't know what the schedule
Better.
is.
Well, it's a start, and I think, nobody's saying you can't come if you don't have a child in the district.
No,
right?
and I get that, but like I said, based on past, there's like a little stigma, and it's like, no, it's, everybody should go. There should be a huge turnout. I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm excited about both of them.
Just real quick, the first program, I don't know if you mentioned this, where is that going to be held? Because on the flyer it just says the Neshoba Regional School District.
It's held at the high school.
At the high school,
Okay.
yeah.
It'll be at the high school, March 21st at 6:30
In the
p.m.
blue.
Oh, the address, okay, yeah, okay.
Actually,
You good with that?
That's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
'cause,
Okay.
And I think he had one more?
Yep, two more.
Thank you.
We also wanted to highlight this year the work that in the collaboration between the Department of Teaching and Learning, Technology, and our building principals. This year, the Department of Teaching and Learning has been implementing monthly meetings with all building principals, as well as our technology department, to work on communicating, collaborating together on professional development, assessment practices, and finding common, consistent communication with the greater Neshoba community. These meetings have allowed for a free flow of ideas amongst all of our schools, constructive feedback, and a collaborative approach to all of the teaching and learning strategies that are being implemented across the district. All of our building principals have been attending. The Department of Teaching and Learning, Martina Kenyon, Cindy Larson, our technology department, myself, are attending these monthly meetings that are focused on improving cross-district communication and creating the consistent expectations and experiences for teachers and students. So these monthly meetings have really kind of just increased that communication piece, the collaboration amongst all of our schools, as well as the consistency as it relates to professional development and the new initiatives that we're implementing across all of our schools.
So something that we started brand new this year, and it's
Yeah.
just working really, really well.
Yep. And then finally, tomorrow marks the second training for the Systemic Student Support Academy. That's the grant that Neshoba earned for social emotional learning that is aligned with its Safe and Supportive Schools initiative for supporting social emotional learning in our schools that we earned this past fall. We were one of 8 school districts that was selected to participate. That academy is sponsored and facilitated by the Rennie Center and the Boston College Lynch School of Education Center for Optimized Student Support. They have also been offering several webinars in addition to the face-to-face workshops, and tomorrow marks day 2 of that. And that's going to tie into the work that we want to put into our goals for next year on social emotional learning.
And I think, and I believe I said this in the phone conversation, I don't think you can go wrong when you're working with the Rennie Center.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that this grant is in play and that this academy is going, that we're part of it. Very, very thrilled with that. Thank you, Todd. That's it for us.
Good stuff. Lynn?
I have a question. So you won these grants for participating, or you won them because of something we're doing?
Do you want to explain it, or Martina could
Yeah,
maybe
so
explain?
we applied, there was a grant that we applied for, and Neshoba applied for the grant. We were one of 8 school districts to earn the grant and participate in this social emotional learning training for potential procedures, policies, programs that we can put and implement into our schools. So we're working with 7 and 8 other school districts, 3 workshops, professional development workshops, as well as webinars and a variety of resources that will help us find ways to implement social emotional learning programs in our district.
So when we're done, we'll have some kind of a district policy or some kind of a district?
It'll help us create.
It'll help us
create one.
with our work, and Martina has
Yeah.
just come to the table, she can certainly shed a little bit of light on it as well. But it will help us in terms of our goals for the next 2 years. You've heard us say that that's where we're starting. This is kind of, gives us a nice foundation for that part of our work.
Kathy had a question.
Yeah, next Friday is George Couros, is that correct?
March 8th.
March 8th,
March 8th.
so it's a week, yeah, it's a week.
Next
from
Friday.
Right, and I'm sorry, I missed the last meeting, but I don't know the extent to which it's okay for school committee members.
We invited you all
Oh,
last
great, okay,
meeting.
because I have
Yeah.
seen him, I saw him when he was in Midfield. If you folks can go, please go, he's just phenomenal. And is a real teacher's teacher and transformational speaker, so.
We've got, as I mentioned in the last meeting, and I probably didn't put it in this one because I probably sounded like a broken record of the past few meetings, but we've got 23 showcases, several professional development workshops. He's speaking and the commissioner is also coming, so please, we invite all school committee members to join us next Friday. It's gonna be a great day.
It's gonna be a great day. We've got some Ignite speakers that are coming along as well, so we've got showcases in the 2 gyms. It should be a really good day.
No, but he's gonna be the keynote.
Yeah,
He's
he'll be
the
there,
keynote in the
he'll be in
morning.
the morning.
First thing in the morning.
What
Yeah.
time?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah,
See,
should be good.
Okay, thank you for that, folks. We're gonna move into new business, with a quick overview of the STEM Scopes presentation. Thank you for coming, since this is on our, well, did you pull it out?
No, we've taken care of it. We've dealt with it. Yeah. So everybody knows Martina Kenyon, and I think she and Todd have got a nice presentation that they're ready to give us tonight to give you, the school committee and our community, an overview of what STEM Scopes is all about, how it fits into our curriculum.
It's gonna fade out, there's nothing I can do about it.
That's okay.
So thanks very much for the opportunity to come here tonight and speak to you about STEM Scopes. STEM Scopes is the primary curriculum resource that we use at the elementary level, and it's part of a number and variety of curriculum resources that we use at the middle school level. And we purchased STEM Scopes as part of some broader multi-year work to adapt our curriculum to fit the expectations of the updated science, technology, and engineering standards that were released probably 3 years ago now. This year was the first year we fully implemented STEM Scopes. Currently it's in place, and like I said, the foundational resource to our curriculum now is at elementary, and that's where we've purchased the most material and so forth as well to support it. Just to give you a little bit more background on the expectations of the new curriculum that we were trying to address in revising our units and also purchasing this resource. One of the major shifts is that the updated standards really emphasize this need for students to actively participate in their learning. We've talked about that before, but even in science, you know, this concept of hands-on, the state really emphasizes doing more than that, so that students are really planning their own learning in terms of what labs they're doing and so forth. On top of that, because we now have so much access to technology, we know that teachers really don't have to deliver information anymore. We have technology. We want students to really be able to develop the skill set to create ideas, to analyze information that they're seeing, or kind of developing through these active learning experiences, synthesizing them, and we were looking for a resource and our curriculum in general to really be able to address and support teachers and students in this area. And just to give a little bit more background, this kind of colorful image there also emphasizes one of the big shifts in the updated standards, in that we now have a layer called the science and engineering practices, which are really address what students who are learning science should be doing, again emphasizing this active participation in learning. And they overlap quite readily with other content areas, which, as we were looking for
resource and developing our curriculum, we really wanted to capitalize on the opportunity to integrate the content wherever possible, so that students really are getting more than just this learning of science out of their experience, although that's obviously important as well. So with that said, I did want to tell you a little bit more about what supports are available in the resource. It would be nice if you could see it.
I know.
Some pictures. But,
Todd, it's sunsetting in the TV, because my computer is fine, it's in the TV.
Okay.
Okay.
we'll work with it.
Can you see it to read it? Do you want us to read it?
No, I'm pretty good. If I
good.
lose track, it'll be okay. So, obviously, again, in science, we're emphasizing this active learning, and the resource itself provides structures and tasks so that students and teachers really can do this work of exploring, of actually demonstrating these practices like planning and investigation, like building an argument based on evidence, like communicating their ideas within these longer term kind of structured tasks. Each unit in STEM Scopes also starts with either like a really interesting question for students or some phenomenon that helps students really hopefully see why they might want to learn more about this and how it might apply into their lives to give them a little bit of a sense of connection to the material. Beyond the kind of, I'll call it pure, but it's collaborative science experiences, the resource itself also has a lot of supports for in the area of literacy. First, students are either reading articles or looking at different media to actually synthesize what they're learning. So they're experiencing this sort of active, exploratory work, and then they're reading to solidify their ideas to make sure they get the details that maybe they didn't get the first time when they were actually working with the ideas themselves. There are many embedded opportunities to also demonstrate their learning or share their ideas either in writing or in speaking either with their peers or presenting to the class, and that's all structured and supported within the unit. So it goes way beyond the text. It's like a real resource that supports teachers in areas that they might not necessarily have experience facilitating that in their classes. Also, because the learning is very collaborative, the resource provides supports for teachers and students to do that collaboration either through structures, jobs that kids have when they're collaborating together, structures for helping them plan so that they can develop those problem solving, those self-monitoring, those collaborative and discussion skills that we want them to get out of every experience. And finally, each unit begins with this idea that every student brings something to the table regardless of your background, your life experience, your learning need. The very opening activity is simply like this phenomenon that students try to understand and try to contribute and share their ideas for in order to then jump off and do further collaborative learning. So every student has many opportunities to contribute to the learning of the group and have a positive impact on their own learning and that of their peers. So then before I finish up, I just wanted to give you two examples of the type of work that students are doing within the STEM Scopes resource. On the left, you see a collection of 4 projects that were the outcome of a first grade unit on sound. Students spent most of the time kind of exploring the idea that sound causes vibration. And in the end, they were trying to answer the questions, how do drums and guitars actually make sound? And they built their own instruments. And then as part of that, connected to the literacy work that the teachers are doing by writing informational how-to books that I have a couple examples of. And then in one class, they actually collaborated with the ITS to create mini videos where they played the instruments, explained how they work, and they put them online into a portfolio so that I think parents are also
So grade
able to
ones.
see it. This is first graders.
I wonder
Yeah.
if there's gonna be a correlation between that and an increase in the number of kids taking band.
I know.
Right?
They at least have an instrument.
Well, at least they understand how it works.
Yeah.
And that you can play too, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And then on the right, on the other side in the middle school end, you see students at the very beginning of a learning experience as part of a big unit on how the laws of physics kind of impact humans, and they're just getting into learning about non-contact forces. So up till now, they've learned about sort of push-pulls and so forth. So here they're trying to answer the question, how can I make something move without touching it? And learning about electrical forces and trying to design an experiment to answer how that may even work. How is that even possible? So just two examples of the kind of work that we're seeing in our students. And then more broadly, the outcomes that we really obviously want to emphasize in any learning of science and engineering here at Neshoba, regardless of the resource, but we're really appreciative that this resource so substantially supports this, is that we want students to deeply learn science. We don't want them to just memorize facts. They don't need that anymore. We have lots of other ways to do that. So we want them to deeply understand what they're doing. We want them to retain big ideas beyond their academic day and life. And we want them to be able to use this to make decisions in their world outside of school as well. We always want our students to be able to build resilience in solving problems. A lot of these problems don't have a clear path forward. The kids have to grapple with it. I was in a second grade class where kids had to really work through a problem, and the pride on their faces in the end was like palpable. They were just so proud that they overcame this issue and did it together. So we know that students make decisions about their interest in science and math very early in elementary school, some of the research shows. And so we really want to make sure that kids are just in general having a positive experience with science, so they don't rule it out. So at least they maintain their interest, even if it just helps them succeed academically, whatever that leads them to. Our goal is to make sure that we can support them to at least stay in the game so that they can make decisions when actually they're ready to make those decisions. And then, as I mentioned already, we definitely want to emphasize the outcomes of those lifelong skills: collaboration, communication, the pro-social side, and obviously the literacy skills that are critical to their academic success and their life success as well. So we're really excited that we've had a resource that can support us in these areas and that's cohesive in that support, and we appreciate that. We've been able to use it so far, so that's all I have.
Does anyone have questions, Scott?
I have maybe three. Maybe more. So how many years has this been implemented?
So we tried it last year and then purchased it only for teaching physical science last year, purchased the subscription and the consumables, and this year was the first full year of implementation.
So K-8, and the expectation is that science teachers primarily, well, at the elementary level they're generalists, but at the middle school that this is integrated into the science curriculum.
Yes, and at the middle school, we purchased the subscription, but it comes with consumable kits. We didn't purchase those because they're using this as part of a collection of resources.
Yes.
They're identifying, okay, I don't have something that really supports this area that I want to work on, and this is kind of a go-to they can pull in. So they've been over the year collecting together the main go-to tasks from this.
But no matter what middle school you're in, students are going to have a STEM scopes experience.
And frankly, we've worked over the last 3 years to have students have a universal science experience. The units that they are using are the same across the district, and
well,
this is part of the resources.
The skills are important and transferable. So it's just starting, and in a few years now, you're going to have all these kids moving up to the high school with this approach to learning science and engineering. So how will it be articulated from 8th to 9th grade and beyond?
So I think the good thing about having standards, I guess, is that K to 12, we've really had to do work to adjust to that. The work that the science teachers have started doing is more adjusting their big lab experiences to kind of work along these same lines where they're unstructuring them, I guess I'll call it, in order to ensure that students aren't just following a procedure that's presented to them and not really sure why. And so I've actually participated in conversations in work with the bio teachers where they were working to kind of at all 3 levels in different ways unstructure that. And we have a new physics course that they've kind of built along that same idea. Mike Tollison, who's part of that, building of that course was on our science and engineering committee, where we did a lot of work digesting these practices, and he's very invested in putting that in place at the high school as well.
Super.
So I think
No,
that
it's a
addresses
great
much.
program, it's a great approach, and to see it move up K-12
Absolutely.
is.
I wish this existed
incredible.
for up.
Does anybody have any, Mike?
Together.
Thanks for presenting, Martina.
Thank
I'm wondering if the initiative of STEM Scopes was something that was put forth by teachers to address a need or some kind of deficiency, or whether it was put forth by administration in order to stay current with updated science, technology, and engineering standards, or like what need did it fill?
Great. So when the updated standards were released a few years ago, we formed a science and engineering committee to kind of figure out what did we need to do to address it. And a number of elementary teachers were on that committee. I think it was like 5 or 6. And through the process of that committee, we identified that we really did need a foundational resource, particularly at the elementary school. If we did a survey across the district, and even though we had pacing guides in place, people were in very different places with science. We didn't really have a lot of resources at the elementary school in particular. So in that way, that started our path toward STEM Scopes. We looked around for resources that could help us both address the new standards, and we were very critical of resources. We threw out a lot because it didn't address the standards and meet our own vision for science. And then a teacher group, the committee, and then I took on volunteers, or asked for volunteers from even beyond that, actually tried out the resource last year and was very instrumental in wanting to move it forward.
So did this coincide with like a curriculum review?
Yes,
And then,
yeah,
so
it was part of a bigger body of work to
It's-
just adjust our curriculum.
So every few years there's a curriculum review, will this constantly be revisited as the standards get updated?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
It's about 5 years.
Yeah.
But we've designed it to meet whatever the need is, so it's not always 5 years.
Yeah.
Elise, did you have a question?
No, I really appreciate you coming in and sharing this stuff, because it's really great, and the program sounds really great, and I've noticed a big difference in my own 2 kids this year in the way that they're starting to talk about science, so it's really cool to hear about it, because I'm like, wow, you guys are really using a lot of scientific language, so thank you. And also, just unrelatedly, that's my daughter's guitar, and
I saw your face. I didn't know what it meant. But I was like, she knows something.
I know that
Yeah, I had to help cut that hole out. It's very hard work.
Well, so then if you do read the how-to book, sometimes
Yes.
it's like, my mom did the rubber band on. So
Mom nearly cut her finger off trying to do it.
For the benefit of science.
All for science.
Thank you.
And Lynn, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the subscription and consumables. Is this something that we've committed to for a period of time, or are we just incorporating it? It becomes part of the curriculum, or are we forever going to be buying integration and curriculum and content?
So in order to access the resource itself, we do have, as the world is kind of going to ongoing subscriptions, so we definitely have that. I do think that over time we'll learn more about what consumables we use and what we don't. And even this year in replenishing, I ordered off of Amazon instead of purchasing it. So I think that what we see as far as consumable costs will decrease, but the subscription, unless we moved away from it, wouldn't.
You're always gonna have to have.
You have to, and that's the world is going that way.
So this is subscription instead of books.
It's
Right.
subscription instead of books.
And we're working on a correlation of books versus subscription and costs. We had talked about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, absolutely,
I
as
think
we look at what we are purchasing, particularly for next year's, next year's budget.
But I think what you're asking is a discussion that we said we would have after the budget
Right.
cycle,
Right.
and that was
Yeah.
something that
We
Elaine
look
had
at
brought
what-
up.
Yeah, what we will.
Okay, good. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your work on the grant. Much appreciated with that.
I'm glad it came through.
Me too, I'm super excited, thank you.
Okay, so our next agenda is the Neshoba Regional High School, well, there's 3. Robotics competition travel approval request, a baseball competition travel approval request, and a cultural breeze trip approval request. And Principal DiDomenico is coming to share some information.
We
Poor
can
guy,
talk
you've
about
got a lot.
I'll put that light back on now too,
No.
if you don't mind, thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
A lot of travel.
Lot of travel.
A lot of travel. So, you wanna start, how do you wanna handle this?
Well, you've got a lot of materials in front of you. All I can say is that I know each of these trips is a worthwhile trip.
Well, I think maybe what we might wanna do is just talk about the two, dare I say domestic, and then we can talk about Greece after. So if we can talk about the baseball and the robotics, if we can check that out first. And I wanna speak to this a little bit too, if you don't mind, Principal DiDomenico. And you can certainly fill in the blank. So the baseball one is an interesting one because that's by invitation only. And our team was invited, and so this group is heading down to Hyannis. It's something that happens every single year or even every other year. They happen to get the invitation this year, so that's why they're going down. The robotics teams, they have generally two. They go down to New Jersey, and then they'll have one in Maine in about 2 months' time. We're very comfortable. I know that Assistant Superintendent McGuire has worked closely with everybody on these to make sure that everything is in place and ready to go. But I want to highlight one piece, and Lynn, you kind of alluded to this last time, and I'm going to bring this up right now, is the travel and how our kids are traveling, particularly with these two. And I spoke earlier with Chairman Ramasco on this as well. It's one of those situations when we talk about peeling back the layers of the onion, when new administration comes in, and just the fact that we're bringing these all forward to the school committee has shone different lights in areas we otherwise would not have seen, quite frankly, because for the most part, and it's no fault of anyone's, it's just that a lot of these trips have been under the radar. And I think I had said earlier to somewhere, perhaps even at this table, it wasn't until I started seeing tweets going out, I'm thinking, what do you mean our kids are there? I didn't know what was happening. And you start calling back and say, wait a minute, we've lost a process here. So also part of the process is that we didn't realize is that there's also a protocol that was attached to this. And in that protocol, it talks about the fact that automobiles are not, private automobiles are something that are not encouraged. In fact, it's discouraged. And to be honest with you, I was saying to Chairman Ramasco tonight, since I was a principal, I remember it was discouraged. That you should always think, I was taught, always think yellow. We don't always think yellow anymore, because now we think about coach buses, but the whole notion that you didn't think about parent traveling or student traveling, driving the car with other students in it, or parents driving. And that's not saying that they're poor drivers, but there's a litigious component to this that's attached to it for school sanctioned trips. So these are coming before you tonight, but I will tell you that we've already had discussion. I've had relatively extensive discussion with both Tanya Rich and Al Fortiani about this. Everything's in place for them, but we're not comfortable with the travel as it's outlined. But we've got that in motion. And what we're hoping that you will do tonight is approve both of these trips, knowing that we are not going to be allowing the carpooling, for example, that is outlined in the robotics trip. We are looking at buses. We've been doing some good work on that in the last little bit. In all fairness to these teachers, this is the first time this is coming their way. And so we have this little transition time period as we're trying to work through this. I don't feel uncomfortable with it. I feel very good because it's getting to us to a very good place in terms of structure. I think for the baseball team, this gets back to, it's a small enough group of students and it's close enough that we can take our sped vehicles, for example. The vans that we've got, I've already spoken with our lawyer who said, yes, that's how that team should be traveling. Al Fortiani going to New Jersey and Maine, I'm not comfortable at all with those vans going because I'm not comfortable with the status of those vans right now to be traveling out of state, quite frankly. So for those, again, I've had lots of discussion with Principal DiDomenico as well on this. So for those trips, we're probably going to be looking at a different type of transportation, primarily bus. So that's where we see these 2 trips going from now, but I just wanna shine a light for a minute and let you know that we have not been, not only were we not following policy, nor were we following protocol, and we have to make that change. The teachers were outstanding to deal with when I talked to them on this, so all the credit to them and to Principal DiDomenico as we make this shift. So everything else is fine, we're comfortable with everything else.
Thanks for doing that, really, really appreciate that. Lynn?
So when you bring the buses down to Hyannis, are the parents gonna allow the buses, or is it just the teams on the buses and the parents will drive themselves back and forth?
The parents can certainly drive separately if they choose to go down, and one of the an issue that comes up with that particular trip is the parents have always gone down with them and they've done different things at night activities, and again, I'm not wanting to change everything right now, but for the sake of getting those students from here to there and back. And I think even things like suppers, the meals and things like that, if it's school sanctioned, they should be in our school sanctioned vehicles, whatever that looks like. But this is a cultural shift, I wanna point that out.
Go ahead.
First of all, I wanna say that for many years, the robotics team at the high school, under Al Fortiani has been exceptional. We had robotics before anybody even knew about robotics. And that being said, I guess that I'm concerned about this, the application. I think it was either October or November when we raised the issue about the German field trip, and some things were put in place. We said we needed at least 2 weeks. We have a policy about fingerprinting, and so we have this before us now. The planned departure date is a week from Friday, and the fingerprinting is in process. And you know, we kicked, and for the German trip, we came in and had a special meeting once all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted to enable that to go forward. I guess I'm surprised that it is the end of February and we have another situation where it's last minute and it's incomplete. I agree completely about the buses. But this is more under folks' control, and I don't know if this was invitation, if they qualified for it, when they knew they were going to go.
I'll start to speak to it.
You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. So a couple of things. First of all, I think that one of the things that, and I've had this conversation with a number of staff, I think one of the things is that we're gonna need to go back and revisit that policy, because the 90 days isn't, it doesn't really work.
I think we said 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, could be, but I think that, is the policy not 90 days?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got an issue there. So we need to streamline that and clean that up. Because the truth is, we don't always know. I mean, like the baseball team is a perfect example where you get it and it's like 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, like you don't know about the invitation until you get it. And then you have this short time. And so it is problematic, I'm just gonna say just logistically, to make sure that we get it to a school committee meeting. And then if there's a problem with anything, and then to try to get it to that side. It's problematic. I mean, it is simply.
But even in ones where it's like, okay, we've got 3 weeks and we could still get these documents emailed out to the school committee and have everybody field their questions through Alita. And
That's a
then,
good idea.
I mean,
Yeah.
we could handle this. So to Kathy's point, nobody wants the robotics team to miss anything, but I think the bigger, I mean, yes, we've got 1 week. And okay, that's kind of not enough time, but more
fingerprinting.
is the fingerprinting, so.
And we're aware of that.
And that's policy, so what are we gonna do if they're not done?
Well, if they're not fingerprinted, they can't, these people can't go. I mean, it's pretty simple and straightforward. And I believe that the Principal DiDomenico also had that conversation with Mr. Fortiani.
Yes.
Elise?
How long is the process taking for people getting fingerprinted? Is it like a week, 10 days, is it?
I don't know that I have that answer.
It's much shorter than it used to be. It used to be quite a lengthy thing, but they're coming back now within a week, for the most part. You know, every time there'll be a straggler that will take a little bit longer.
So
some
I
of
mean, are
these-
we expecting these
We're expecting
within a
these to
day
be all
or
in
two,
place.
or?
Yeah, we're
you
expecting
know?
all of these to be in place, quite frankly. But to I wanna go back to Chairman Lamasso's point, because your point is well taken, and unfortunately, that's where the position we're finding ourselves in, saying to people, if this isn't done, it can't happen. So, but we're also not wanting to shut things down.
Right.
However, but this is difficult, because it's such a sea change for our folks and for the culture. And again, it's back to the high school again. Here's one more thing where they say, oh my goodness, more rules? Well, kind of, you
No,
know,
just
so.
enforcing. But when we talked about this back in,
October, November.
yeah, for the poor German guy,
Unfortunately.
we know, I mean, we talked about the ones that we know, like, we know the deck is gonna go to Boston, or it's gonna have them, and those are set well in advance.
Yeah.
They knew this robotics thing was happening well in advance, so they're gonna go to this one, they're gonna go to another one. I mean, those should already be in process, cause they know, you know, and if they don't make them, then they don't go, but.
And you know you're preaching to the choir on this,
Okay.
right?
No, I don't believe you.
No, I
But
totally
I
agree.
think it's well, I
totally
think it's
agree.
well said, and I think it's valid, and so people need to know, non-negotiable, 2 weeks, everything done, or forget it, cause we're responsible if something happens to these kids. Not the teachers, us.
But we do understand about when, you know, sports go and it's short notice, we get that, you know, but this one, they knew they were gonna go.
To be honest with you, in all fairness, I don't know about the New Jersey. The main one, yes, I don't know about the New Jersey. I don't know whether you know, but.
There's a signature date of January 20th, though.
Oh, you're right. I see that.
So why did we just get this, all right, whatever, I don't wanna belabor it, your point's well taken, you know, I mean, that's crazy. Just gotta tell your folks.
Well, the issue is the fingerprint, I'm sorry.
So where do we stand? Like,
Well, this is what I was gonna
right.
say, the outstanding issues seem to be the fingerprinting is not done. We don't have that, the results, and transportation. So either one of those is a deal breaker, I would imagine.
Well, the transportation will be done.
Yeah, the transportation will be done.
Then
Because
it's-
Brooke's gonna take care of it.
Yeah.
So you just have to, if we're gonna approve this, or someone's gonna make a motion, students will be transported in district, I already wrote it,
Okay.
sanctioned vehicles.
What's that gonna do to the cost?
It's not gonna affect the cost for the, we can't.
We're
do
gonna
that.
end up needing it through the budget.
It would be-
And the fingerprinting's non-negotiable.
The fingerprinting has to be done or they can't go.
And so then, yeah.
So then you've only got one teacher going with 20 students, in worst case scenario. But there's nothing we can solve for that.
We can't have one with 20 kids
Yeah.
going for overnight.
So that's where, if we find ourselves in that position, and I don't think we will.
No, I don't either.
But given the dates that they're on a weekend, I don't foresee a problem with a staff member saying, hey, I'll step up, I can go on that trip and satisfy the ratio requirement.
But we have to approve it today, we don't have another meeting. Unless we wanna do what we did for the German trip.
What?
We came in,
No,
we
we don't-
met, and we said,
Oh, no.
You don't wanna get into the same situation.
No, I'm not gonna, I think that was a massive inconvenience and I don't wanna do it again. So I think you work it into the motion that it's contingent on the number of people. I don't care who the names are, you don't care who the names are.
no, but we have a
Right.
policy that says that chaperones have to be fingerprinted.
Right,
That has
but
to
I
be
agree. I
followed.
think that if that's written into the motion, then that's what's gonna, that's what will happen.
Got it? Make sense?
It does, and how, is principal gonna report back to us and say, or to Brooke, who will report to us and say, this is what we have? You know, if we approve it, we're responsible for it. If folks, if it doesn't pan out, then, and we approve it,
I've certainly been going back and forth with both Todd and Brooke on this, and will continue to do so, because that's a question that lingers in our mind as well, and I've been given every assurance that it's being taken care of, and that it's just a matter of time to get those things getting in, but I hear you, Kathy, when you say
I think
that
we
that's
all do.
an
I
issue.
w- yeah.
So so let's get this wrapped up so we can move on, but to Kathy's point, what's the contingency plan? How many chaperones need to be on this trip?
Well, with 20 students, you have a 10-to-1 ratio. So, Mr. Fortiani being one, he's well over and above the ratio right now. But we'd make sure we satisfy at the bare minimum that requirement of 10-to-1.
So you would have at a minimum 2 chaperones
At a minimum, but
to meet the requirement.
These
Okay.
parents are all involved. I mean, these parents are actively involved in
Okay,
robotics.
so, but that's not, so we're talking about the nits and gnats here in order to get this motion on the floor and get it moved. What is it, Lynn?
Well, if these parents are actively involved, I mean, this isn't the only robotics competition they've gone away for, right?
absolutely. Yep.
So
You're right.
why weren't they fingerprinted a while ago?
We,
It's a different issue, but just a question.
It's part of the broader issue.
Gotcha. So does this whole form have to be redone again when they finally find it, when they get to the right people that are going, so it's accurate?
We
If they're
always do
different
something
people.
right before.
Yeah, if they're different people, we certainly
We always know.
would make that correction.
Okay.
okay, so, assuming, oh boy, here, this is crazy. Assuming that a minimum of 2 chaperones who are quarried and fingerprinted are clear, assuming that students will be transported in a district-sanctioned vehicle, are you guys good with?
That's not what it says here, it's not.
No, let me,
Robotic trip or not.
Steve, hold on, just go with this for a minute, let's go with it. Are you okay with the trip, the overnight trip, from March 8th and returning on the 10th?
If everything was satisfied, all our requirements were satisfied, yes.
Okay.
It's a good trip.
So,
It's a good competition.
does anybody else have a concern about the trip itself? No. Okay. So then I think what we need is someone, this is gonna be so convoluted, Alita, work with me. Unless somebody wants to step up, I'll give it a shot. To move to accept the March 8th, returning March 10th, robotics competition in Mount Olive, New Jersey for 20 students and a minimum of 2 quarried and fingerprinted chaperones for the students to be transported in a district-sanctioned vehicle and stay at the Residence Inn on Continental Drive in Mount Olive, New Jersey.
How do you define
As a
district
Can somebody move the motion?
vehicle?
So moved.
Thank you. Somebody second it? Sorry, you got it. Second it?
Oh, wait, I
Thank you.
second myself, can I?
No, but I appreciate the input.
Now, how do we define a district sanctioned vehicle?
It's a district-sanctioned vehicle, so it's on Brooke. If Brooke, Steve, are we gonna boil the ocean
Is
here?
it a POV or what are we talking about here? Is it a private vehicle?
No.
That's the point, we can't
That's
have
what it
private,
can't
that's
be.
what it
Okay,
can't
so,
be.
okay.
It
Fine.
needs to be like a bus or a vehicle from, a district vehicle. That's really at the end what it boils down to, no private vehicles.
No private vehicles. I agree. All right, move the question.
Already did.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. All those in favor? Oh my God, we did it, it's unanimous. All right, you got one down.
So.
We have to do the
and then-
baseball one.
The baseball one.
I have a question though. When would we talk about, is that gonna come up later, these activities with these parents that are actively involved in the, like robotics?
What
As far as
are you
fingerprinting
looking for?
quarries? I'm just wondering, because this isn't the first competition they've gone to, that they've gone to another
Do
location.
you remember a few meetings ago when, like, to use your term, that poor German teacher came
Yeah.
forward? And do you remember that? And
Yeah.
it was like, oh, they have to be fingerprinted.
Right.
Well, that was just determined a couple of months ago. So I think what's happening now is.
You're going back and taking a look, right?
Well, no, it's gonna be required.
Yeah, and cleaning things up, but we're just really tightening up what's already supposed to be in place.
Does that fall under a policy?
Part of it is policy and part of it is protocol.
So it's, even if it's not policy, it's an extra measure of safety, and I think it's important, and I think everyone here thinks it's important.
I'm just,
So we're moving on.
I'm just wondering if we have to do that in policy.
No, you don't. Your policy's fine right now.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about the next one. That's the one to Hyannis.
Baseball.
For the
pretty-
varsity baseball team. 24 students, 1, 2, 3. Oh my gosh, they're all corded and fingerprinted. Thank you.
We're doing better, honestly.
Well, no, I'm not being,
It's
I'm
a
not,
week to Greece.
I'm not being critical, it's
Really is
just,
a major
there's
thing.
so many,
Okay.
there's so many things that, I
Really
mean, it's
is.
hard for people.
It's hard for our staff too.
And thank you for getting this one to us with more than a week's notice. So, given that, does anybody have any concerns or questions about this particular trip?
This is another one where we have to ensure that it's district sanctioned transportation.
That's right.
No,
We
everything
all
else
of
is,
them,
everything
yeah.
else is fine.
Okay, so then I need someone to move, I'm not gonna do this.
I move that we approve the baseball team's trip to Hyannis
As amended.
Okay, so let me help with that.
as amended to include a school sanctioned vehicle for all transportation.
Taken fine.
On March 29th, returning on the 31st.
March 29th.
You kinda gotta do the whole thing, don't you? All right, and that there will be 3 chaperones who are corded and fingerprinted, that way everybody feels comfortable.
That's it.
Are we good?
I'll say.
Thank you. And who moved it? Steve did, you seconded it. Any questions? All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous.
Next one,
No.
Greece. Come on up and join us.
This is Jackie Carter. She's a great teacher. Do not mess around with her. I mean, tonight's already blown, right? So what the heck?
It's all good. It's all for good stuff.
So do you want to give us just a bit of a broader
Sure.
review?
So,
Thanks.
so a Greece trip was planned about 1.5 years ago, actually. Just takes that long for a trip this size to kind of get off the ground and decisions to be made. But it's through EF Tours, which has been in business since 1965. And they are world-class at what they do. And so there's 45 travelers, there's 5 chaperones with dedicated tour guide throughout 24/7 from EF. So there's 6 that will be with us, all teachers, all fingerprinted, and all background checked through EF. They add that extra layer. I included the itinerary, so it's 9 days. We are bused to the airport. We have a stopover in Frankfurt. We go to Greece. We're going to a number of different cities and a few stops in some different islands. Athens, I've built in some little additional things like stopping at an olive farm. We have a cooking class that will be done. This is a cultural trip. And we go to islands like Mykonos and Rhodes and Santorini. And the trip actually was designed through students. Students came to me and knew I had led tours for a number of years. And a lot of the seniors that are graduating this year I've had since freshman year, and I'm their class advisor. So they said, we want to go to Greece, we want to go to Greece for 2 years. They've been asking. So we put this together, and we're supposed to leave April 12th, Friday. We don't miss any school. And we come back on Easter Sunday.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah,
I have a question.
I'm Corey.
Why are all the chaperones teachers?
Well,
and not me?
And not you, yes. Well, that could change in the future if you'd like to come.
It sure could.
Love to include a school committee member or a superintendent.
Or a member of the community.
A member of the community.
Who was a
They're-
former school committee member.
Absolutely, they're fantastic trips. They're the best thing that I've done. It's life-changing for the kids. It's life-changing. It's been life-changing for me to travel with them, to watch them grow. It's probably the best experience in the world.
Yeah.
So about 45 students are going. You might have mentioned it. What was the criteria to select the
Anybody
students?
could come?
Anybody?
Anyone. Yep, so it was a.
9 through 12?
Uh-huh. Yep, so it was an announcement made, before you could make just an announcement. If anyone's interested in receiving information about a Greece cultural tour, leave your email address in the front office. There was just a list put up. And so then anyone who did inquire, we sent out information. It was a process, and only one bus. I didn't want 2 buses, so I had to draw a line at some point once it got filled.
And they're leaving later on Friday the 12th?
We are after school.
Okay.
So if there are no other questions, I'm gonna have Kathy.
Okay, I move to approve the Neshoba Regional High School Cultural Greece Field Trip request on April 12th, 2019 to April 21st, 2019 to Greece and the Greek islands it says 50 students and 5 chaperones. Do you have 45 kids?
No, sorry, it's 45.
45 students.
45 and 5.
And 5 chaperones, as detailed in the approval request form. Students will be transported in district-sanctioned vehicles, and that's it.
That's it.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just have a comment. Sorry, Lorraine. I wanted to point out that when you work with a company like EF Tours like this, like Jackie has, like I have in the past, they obviously take on so much of the safety and the liability that exists. And what you didn't mention is there is also somebody in Greece from EF who is on the ground should there be an issue, et cetera. They're very, very good at doing that. So when you go through just the juxtaposing going with a company like this, they take care of a lot of that for you.
We actually also build in it's an extra fee that they know they get. It's a travel protection. So if anything were to happen, they would fly their family there. They would fly them home at no one's expense. So it's a really good thing to have.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Sorry.
Oh.
It's all good, it's all good.
Okay, good, let's move on. Oh, good, the E-rate update.
Well, mine is getting the same.
Let's move this along, people.
So I have an E-rate update for you. First, I'd like to explain to you a little bit for those people that don't know what E-rate is. It's a federal program. It's called the Universal Service Schools and Libraries Program. And it reimburses districts, libraries up to 90% on their telecommunications and internet access. The percentage base is on free and reduced populations. And they offer 2 categories for reimbursement. Category 1 is for connections, which are internet and fiber between our buildings. And we get a 50% reimbursement on that expenditure. Category 2 is for network equipment, and it's part of a 5-year program. Fiscal year 20 is the last year of that program. And the network equipment is the network switches and the wireless access points. Basically, I think it was 2016, they came up with a population for each school and or an enrollment for each school, and they have an allowance of $150 per student in order for us to equip our schools with these wireless access and network switches. So fiscal year 20 would be the last year for this program. In fiscal year 20, built into our budget, we have expenditures that will bring us to 100% of our expenditures at the high school and over 50% for our other schools across the district. One of the things that you have to do with this E-rate program is you have to have the ability to pay for the program, for whatever it is you purchase in full, and then they reimburse you in the following year. So we're always 1 year behind on what we get for the expenditures in a given year. And just so you know, it's not like one of these things, like if we had some money left at, say, Center School, we can't buy equipment with that money that's allocated, because all of the equipment has to be labeled that it's E-rate and as it's designated in the application process. Like I said, fiscal year 20 is the last year of the program, but at my recent NASBO meeting, they let us know that there are still some funds that people haven't asked for. There are a number of districts that haven't applied for these funds for whatever reason, so there's still money left in the pool. They're looking at a couple of different ways as to how they're gonna disperse this. They may continue this same program and maybe allocate it towards another kind of equipment or the same kind of equipment. But that's about where we stand right now with E-rate. We're in a pretty good place. So if anybody has any questions, I try to answer them.
That was a good overview. I don't know that we've ever gotten that type of an overview, comprehensive, so thank you. Appreciate that. It's good to have you here, Pat Maroney. Okay, we are now moving into old business, and two big chunky ones. The biggest chunky one is the FY20 budget. So we've got 3 sub-bullets under this agenda item, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk about other aspects of the budget, just so you all understand. The reason we have these 3 sub-bullets is because they were topics that we discussed at the last one, and we knew we were gonna come back to them. Okay, so the first one is full-day kindergarten, so level set, where are we with it? I think where we are is that the school committee generally agrees that we want to adopt universal kindergarten, which means there will not be a cost for full-day kindergarten for anyone in the district. We currently have full-day kindergarten, but it comes with a cost, not a fully loaded cost recovery expense to families, but an expense nonetheless. If students or parents want their child to attend half-day kindergarten, they can do that at no fee, level set. So tonight what we need to talk about is if it is accurate that we all agree that we want to move forward with implementing universal free full-day kindergarten, the question is, when do we want to implement the program? How do we garner the upfront cost for the first year, which is about $600,000? And how long do we want that gathering up of those funds in order to be able to afford that 1 year that we don't get any reimbursement in to be? And I want to also just share one thing. I got a couple of questions over the past 2 weeks. There's a misconception out there, and this is hard stuff because there's a lot of information, right? And then people go and talk, and then they get it wrong, and it's all confusing. There is never going to be a time, or there is not a time now, where the state is going to pay for the full cost of full-day kindergarten. It doesn't happen now. It's not going to happen next year. It's going to be interesting to see if it ever happens. There is still a cost borne by the district, and likely the cost that we have now. Maybe a little bit will shift, but it's dependent upon the number of kids that come into the district. So there is no full cost recovery through the state for universal K, right?
That's right.
Okay, I just think it's really important because I've even heard some of us kind of mixing up that metaphor. So given all that craziness, where do you guys want to be with this, funding this program, and when? Elise.
So I know it's the next piece on this little sub-bullet, but I would almost rather we made a decision about, even if, I realize we can't control what happens next year and the year after and what other school committee members do in the future and other, administrators. Because I would be comfortable with 2 years, I'd be comfortable with 3 years, but I think getting back to what you mentioned in our last meeting, or one of the meetings where we talked about this, I also want to see us trying to be diligent about OPEB. And so if we say, no matter what, we're gonna put in 50K a year, but then, that means we end up being able to still do kindergarten in 2 years, then I'm happy. If we're saying 50K a year, but it means actually it's ended up taking us, 3 years to get to that 600,000, that's less awesome, but it's still, we're making the commitment. But I don't wanna make that commitment and say, pick an arbitrary number like 2 or 3 years, without also having kind of talked about how much we're going to try to set aside for OPEB. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. So I'm going to broaden what I really appreciate that you said that, because I think that, but I'm going to broaden it. And I'll tell you why I appreciate it, because I'm going to broaden it. I don't even know that it's about OPEB. I think it's about where we are here and now for this year. We do have a commitment. We have a commitment that we have to fulfill for retiree health, and we're paying as we go right now, and that's okay until you look at the curve of people that are retiring. So we are not 10 years, whatever, how many years, going to be able to afford retiree health care in a pay-as-you-go stance and not have to reduce existing programs and staffing because of the number of people that are retiring. That's just reality, right? Okay. But I want us to also think, and that's why I'm saying, so for this year, it's like, oh, we found $300,000, let's just plunk it into this program. I'm not there. I'm not saying we shouldn't use a chunk of it, but I want us all to also think that we did not make it into the state's program for the high school for this coming year. But we've already committed to refiling a statement of interest. We know that's $1 million to $1.2 million. We don't know exactly for that feasibility study. The state said, we encourage you to do this again. There were other people in the queue from the previous year. No promises, and we all know that we have all committed to doing something with the high school. The communities want us to do something with the high school. So there's that expense. We have pulled $500,000 to fix problems at the high school out of the budget. We're going to be looking at borrowing instruments for that outside of the budget this year. So I get it. We want to do this. We want to do this universal K. We all want to do it. But I want us to think about the responsibilities on the plate. That's it. So to your point on OPEB, I would say if there's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I had started this savings account a couple of years ago, and there's the $300,000. That's awesome news. Like, I mean, celebrate it. But what do we want to do with the money, to your point? And then you're going to get to, well, I want to do it in 2 years, I want to do it in 3 years. And I guess I'd like to hear what other people have to say, because I really appreciate what you just said.
If I can just mention too, I think too, it does tie in. So I think it's okay to have the discussion broader right now, because I think that it's all
I think that's what we're
interconnected.
doing.
Yeah.
So what do you other folks, everyone needs to have an opinion at this table about every one of us. There is no way I'm letting you off the hook. Madam.
So, sort of along Elisa's line, I had thought about the OPEB money. And I know last year and this year, the original, amount that we were gonna put into OPEB was 50, and we added another 50.
We
or
said
25.
100, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, let's face it, we owe 42 million. I mean, 43, sorry. I don't know what the plan is for getting us to 43, but my thinking is, and maybe it's fiscally irresponsible, is that we've been chugging along, putting little pieces in. Is it gonna kill us to take that 50, put 50 in OPEB, and then take the other 50, instead of putting it in OPEB, put it in our full day K account for 3 years? That's $150,000 right there.
We're talking about $300,000 that Brooke says she can scrape out of other revolving accounts.
Well, I wanna see where they're scraping from. I mean,
Well, you
It
missed the
is
meeting.
my-
Well, we
I'm
can't
sorry.
go
All right,
back.
then I don't, then.
No, don't give up that easy.
No.
But,
No,
but,
no, but that's my thinking, if you're scraping, and when we say, if there are, I wanna see where the money's coming from, because what I worry about, oh, hi Pat.
let her,
But yeah, what I worry about is, and this is not just this year, but every year, is that, you know, we have an initial ask for the budget. And then it gets reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced. Now we're down to, I think, to a good place. And then we, for lack of a better word, find money. I worry about what that does to our credibility with the towns. I don't know. I do know that the way that this needs to be framed is that this is a program. We just heard about the STEM scopes. That was program development to enhance a curriculum, to make it consistent with, you know, that old trope about 21st century learning. I mean, it's great stuff. Now, I don't hear that in how we brand full day K. I hear full day K, full-time, half-time, blah, blah, blah. I think to build support for it, understanding of it, it should be framed around what it means programmatically. What difference is this going to make for kids? We are, and we're not, and there's a difference between spending money, in my mind, and investing. We are investing, we're looking for money to invest in our full day K program. And that's what we ought to be talking about. And then, you see what I'm saying?
you know what,
So
though, but I think, I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I think we're like beyond that now. I mean, I think we're beyond that. Because
Beyond
right
what?
now, the discussion is not, do we wanna do it? It's, how are we gonna do it?
No, I get it, but it should be, those two things should be married together. That this is a program, it's not just so kids can go to kindergarten all day or full day. Why is it important? What is it gonna do?
But
How's it gonna-
if we go, Kathy, I get it, and you made your point, and we can,
Yep,
and
okay.
I think we're there. If we go back to the philosophical discussions, I think it's gonna open up Pandora's box for things that you don't intend, or that I don't think anybody wants to intend here.
And I do think that that was one of the reasons why the principals came and spoke the way that they did for this, because that's when we were talking about the very thing that you were
Okay,
talking about.
but when the dust settles, and people who are not sitting at this table, who are looking at how we spend our money, they're gonna be talking about money, they're gonna be talking about programming and the value of having full day K. That's my only point. I don't wanna open this up again. I know philosophically, most of us are there, but it's not what sticks with folks. And my point is that it should,
But
and then you're
that's
investing
your
in
job,
that.
so when someone talks to you and they ask
Nobody
you
talks
about
to me.
it, well then get your butt out in your community, because that's what you should be
No,
sharing with people,
but I
is
wanna
the
know
reason why.
where the money's coming from, and if, are the towns concerned, do the towns know that our goal is to build this program?
That's your job, you go tell them. So where do you guys, what do you wanna do, Elaine? Sorry.
So
Again,
there
it's
was
the
a-
night.
There was a question from the last meeting, they said you need to check the auditor about those revolving funds, so
And we
what was
did.
the outcome of that?
Yeah. So we're fine. We have $200,000 sitting in one account that we can draw down on. And we asked the auditor where we could house it, what vehicle this could look like. We've cleaned up the K account in this last audit, this last year, so because it was in a deficit, because again, you run a deficit every year. So that's clean right now, so it's a good vehicle for us to use it, for lack of a better term, as a savings account where we could transfer money into that account and it would sit there for the time until whatever time period it is, like whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever time period. So we do have a vehicle in place now that we can do. We've got 200,000 that we can pull from one account and 100 that we can pull from the other, which is exactly what I was talking about last time. So for the 300,
So they don't have to be.
So they're not restricted accounts?
Exactly.
Right, so that
But they
leaves us.
could be.
But they don't.
I have to say that because that's
You
what-
can say what you want, but we had this conversation before. The question is it restricted? I asked it last week, Elaine has asked it again, the answer is no.
Right, right, and
Right.
that's the response back.
Okay.
Which is why we feel that we comfortable in doing what we can do.
I'll throw another monkey wrench in here.
What the hell at this point?
Get that down, Rubenstein, put in a monkey wrench. The stipulation accounts that we set up last year, that we asked to set up last
Stabilization?
year.
Oh, the
Stabilization
Mhm.
accounts. The one for the field, which Lynn was very concerned about. We have that field coming up for whatever.
The rug.
Long before.
Carpet.
Long before the bonds are paid for. So we have that as an expense. When we were talking about healthcare last year, Chairman Ramasco brought up the golden penalties that might occur. So, I mean, we have a whole host of, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We have a whole host of large expenses, plus the longer it takes us to deal with getting MSBA to approve something or whatever, we're gonna be subject to more and more issues like the fuel tank and other things that happen at the high school. I think to take a whole chunk of that for $300,000 at this point in time is somewhat irresponsible, and that I personally would be more comfortable with saying 100,000, 100,000. I know it stretches it out before we give free kindergarten, but I would be more comfortable with that rather than stripping us down to the bare minimum of what we may have in some sort of reserve, per se.
How do you feel about that?
Well, my concern is that the longer we stretch it out, the more opportunities there are to raid that fund or to use it for something else. It's about a matter of priorities for me. If we decide this is a priority, we're looking at funding a temporary gap, then let's get it done, let's get it over with, and then let's take that money that we were saving 2-3 years, whatever. And I liked Mike's idea from the last meeting, let's dedicate that to OPEB. I know we can't say what future committees would do, but let's push past it and then use that money for something else.
Well, I guess that's my question. What is the other money that you're referencing that would?
Well, if we use the $300,000, we're not talking about that. If we save $100,000 this year, $100,000 next year, $100,000 in the third year, in order to implement the free full day
600,
kindergarten, then in our budget process, we've sort of been allocating $100,000 a year. Let's keep that $100,000 allocation, but let's switch it to something else.
To OPEB, for example, yeah.
Like that, in our process, that money will already have been built in.
I like that on its face, and I like that philosophically, and I will just say it's, the makeup of the committee is gonna determine whether that happens or doesn't. To your point, you made the point. But things get lost in translation, things get dropped. So I'm not sure that we can really make any commitments for future years and future committees and future budgets. I mean, we can say, the intention is to do this in 3 to 4 years. I'm not comfortable with 2. You won't get my vote on that. I'm sorry. We have too many other important financial constraints, and I think everybody knows that. The administration knows that. You guys know that. So I can absolutely get behind it, but I feel like, and anybody that has any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. I have no problem sharing with you the realities of what we're staring at. Steve made the comment about some of that. Comfortably, we have 300,000 found dollars. I'd say you need to put at least 100,000 of that in OPEB, in addition to what you already have there. And then if you want to use the rest of it towards this allocation, if you want to put a little bit towards the carpet, because that I completely forgot about, then do it. But go ahead.
I think one thing that's important to remember is that there are a lot of, I don't want to say competing interests, but there are that different members of the community, different members of the district have different priorities. So while a priority to implement full day K in a 2 to 3 year time frame is a priority for some, contributing to a liability the size of OPEB is a priority for others. And addressing some of these unexpected costs is also a priority, and working towards the SOI and being able to fund that appropriately is also a priority. So I typically take the middle road. So my middle road on this is take a little bit of it, put it towards our funding for full day K, but I would say I'm not comfortable with 2 years. Even 3 years, I really think it's a 4 or a 5 year process. And I know that some people want to push that in, but I think that would be disregarding some of the other completely legitimate concerns that other members of the district have in where our money goes. And we're already in a really tight spot this year with our budget, and we've got other things to, we've got other considerations, and I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, please.
So, and I just want to say too, keep in mind that my job, my role here was to bring forward, a blueprint. That, I'm not offended at all with whatever route it is that you decide to take at the end of the day, so I want to be really clear on that. And I agree with a lot of what Steve said as well, and that don't think, because we have to come up with the money for whatever it is. We've got, always got to figure that out. So I think your points are really, all of your points are very, very well made. So I'm not wed. That's the presentation, but I'm not wed to that. If you come back, I'm so respectful of every one of you. I will respect whatever that decision is. I'm very comfortable with whatever decision you come forward with. But my one thing, and I guess what I don't want to see, is I don't want a repeat of what happened previous to my time. And so I want to make sure that if you say 3 or 4 years or 5 years, that's
on you. That's going to be on you, and that's not going to happen. And I'll tell you why. Because the last time what happened was not the school committee.
No, I understand.
It was the superintendent sending a letter to the community saying, "Guess what you're getting?"
Right.
Which is why you said, "What the heck? My kid is 9, and we still don't have it." So but what we're doing
I absolutely
here,
understand that.
right? So let's make sure that you know that whatever we decide, you own, not us.
I'm not, and that wasn't meant to be negative.
No, I don't think that it was, but I'm saying, no, we'll make our decision and then you carry it through.
That's right.
That's totally
That's right.
opposite of what we said.
Yeah. So I just want to, I guess the only reason for bringing that up is because I feel that there needs to be comfort for those young parents that are coming through, that whatever the decision is, they know that they can take that to the bank. That's all. That was my only reason at that point.
Can I ask one more question? The last time we were talking about this, which was 6 years ago, did it ever get this far? Did the discussions get this far?
No.
So we're on a different track then?
No, that's why I said, I mean,
No,
Lynn and
the
I were
vote-
the only ones that were here.
The vote came up, and we said no, and he sent letters to all the parents saying yes. And we found out about it because parents called us up.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we said no.
I remember hearing about it from the community.
Yeah.
Oh, guess what we're doing? I was like, really? We are?
the
That's
school
how it
committee
came
said
up. But this, what's happening now, and that's why the superintendent going and doing this intense investigation, talking to all these different districts. I mean, you couldn't have done a better job.
Thank you.
And honest to God, that was why we kept pushing back, because we didn't have the information. It was kind of like cherry picking it. Now it's all there, and I get everybody wants it, but it's like, how can we do it? It was never we'd never want to do it. It was always, how can we do it? Now we know how we can do it, and the path forward is what's the time frame, and what's the commitment financially? And you're the only one that hasn't said what you want to do.
Well, I said no. But no.
That's okay.
The problem I'm having is we are committing the community to a fee. Whether DESE continues to provide a portion of it, we're still increasing the budget by X. Okay, and it's going to increase the budget, which we'll have no control over, and we still have, like we said, we still have the high school coming up, feasibility study, we still have the rug. We still haven't paid for the 2,000 capital expense for the high school. We're still paying that off. I mean, there's a commitment of money coming up through us, and by putting in the K, it is a commitment that we can't take away. It's there.
So that part is absolutely true, but just keep in mind that that you're already, and I think that's the discussion you and I had earlier today too. You're already paying for that cake anyway. Like, you know, when I put those slides up, you're already paying a portion of it. And what's offset, and you're paying for.
But that chapter 70 money is not guaranteed.
Well, the chapter 70 will always be
There'll
what it
always be
is.
chapter 70 money.
Right,
But
and
it
it'll
won't
always.
always be for kindergarten. They took it away with the state, why won't they take it away for that?
I don't know, because what's gonna happen is your K falls in, so you have true K to 12 now. So your chapter 70 is based on K to 12, as opposed to right now, ours is 1 to 12 with a half-day K. That's gonna complicate things, but it's really 1 to 12. So your chapter 70 money just changes to adopt in bringing that K. So it's not going to increase it substantially. The problem is that first gap year. That's really the issue, to have the money when you're not getting any tuition money and you're not getting any.
You're still gonna have an expense.
You're still gonna have the expense no matter what.
And it's gonna be about what you're paying.
What you're paying now. There's
almost
no
equal.
major increase.
Okay, and then as far as the 300,000 goes, geez, Neil's term, the optics are really bad.
I want to, so.
That's what Kathy's saying.
But I want to go back to that, because to be honest with you, you asked us to come back and tell us how to find something, and we did. That's what we did. We went back to that.
But it's great, but we're scrambling to get down another $100,000 and there's $300,000 sitting somewhere. It doesn't look good.
But can I just make a
Yeah.
comment? That preschool revolving account that we were talking about, we changed the program dramatically this coming year. We did not know how our revenue was going to flow into that program. It could be that the money that's sitting in that revolving account
Could have been used
could have
completely.
been, most of it could have been used up if we didn't have enough students being tuitioned in. It's all dependent on our special ed population, because the special ed population does not pay for, it doesn't pay tuition. It's only the, what is it, the model children. Yeah,
The role models.
The role models that pay for it. So if that tuition was low, or even if more had free and reduced applications, then we would have got even less. So I've been watching that all year, since September, when we first started to get all the initial payments in. I've been watching it continually. I get monthly updates on every bit of revenue that's coming into that account. I'm comfortable that a program right now can sustain at least 200,000 to be taken out of that towards this program, and that's why Brooke and I discussed that. And as far as, the reason why there was even any money in that account is because the budget process in the past, prior to our forensic audit, they used the revenue that came into that account as a funding source for the budget. And no expenditures were ever placed against the revolving account. So, and there were two accounts that was happening it was within this extended day and preschool. So that money is still sitting there, and it's not a lot of money. And again, the same thing with the extended day program. We want to make sure that that's a standalone program.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing everything I can to treat it as if it's a standalone program for all their benefits, the cost of them being in our buildings till 6 o'clock at night. I try to make sure that everything is as you all requested. So moving that forward, I think that you really need to look at that money. It's not found money, it's just money that we needed to make sure we were stable with it before we decided to commit it to anything else.
But I think what Lynn is saying, I'm gonna put it in different words, because I think you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I can read you by now. I think the concern is, but if we're pressed to do this, why should we be pressed to do something else and challenge the budget to find even more in other ways? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
You mean a regular appropriation?
No, what I'm saying is, don't think about these two accounts that you're, but if the challenge was, where, geez, could we find the money somewhere? And now, all of a sudden, you've been, I mean, and I know it sounds like much simpler than it really was, but you were able to find that money by kind of really clamping down or doing whatever. I think the concern is, from folks in the community, then where else could you do that? Where else could you tighten the belt? Where else could you, and maybe you're gonna say, I'm giving you an out here, and it might be the real one and it may be made up, I don't know. Well, everything else was cleaned up except those 2 accounts, and now that we know where we stand, we can use that.
I think that's pretty much
Yeah,
exactly
that's
where we
pretty
feel,
much,
where we stand.
that is pretty
Because
much.
we've run these programs now for the last year, and we're comfortable, and we're saying, yeah, we're feeling that they're stabilized right now.
But I think, you know, to Lynn's point, you gotta understand, like, if you're not sitting at this table, or even if you are, if you're not dabbling in the budget and you're not managing the budget on a day-to-day basis, you're sitting out in the community and you're hearing about this, it's kind of like, what are you talking about, right? And people don't necessarily have an understanding of what the $300,000 means in the budget. What does that mean on the assessment? So I'm just reiterating what Lynn's saying.
I guess what we said, I think, now I'm really kind of saying, I guess we should not have done that. Like that, I'm just saying that that's what it feels
Well,
like.
if you didn't do that,
No,
and then
but
we
I'm
found out, I think that would be worse.
I'm just saying, I mean, it's in the spirit of transparency, I thought that that's what you were looking for us to do, so that's what we did. We
Okay,
went
so
to try
you're
to find that.
misunderstanding.
No, I don't think so.
I do, because I think what Lynn was saying, and you gotta.
You did good.
I think what Lynn was saying was, if you can find it here, you know, the optics to the community are, well, where else can you find it? You're taking it as, I thought I did the right thing. Yes, you did, and we're saying, and where else can you find money?
Yeah, but it sounds like the pre-K revolving account was specifically because of a change in programming, and so therefore it's not necessarily found money, it's a change in programming that costs less than was expected for the year. Now, in my opinion, that money came from early education. It should stay in early education. To take it and say, well, we're gonna use it for a different priority. I mean, this is a matter of priorities.
So let's ask this question, keep that thread. Was that program self-sustaining, or was there money from the budget offsetting the cost of that program?
Probably not.
Okay, so Elaine, but that's important, so let's continue your thread. There's money that's sitting in that account. Well, that was money that people put in, and if parents put it in, we should use it just for early ed. What we're getting at here is, but that wasn't self-sustaining. The budget was coming up underneath it, so what's left in there may have been tuition dollars, but what augmented the full cost of the program was money out of the budget. So that's a wash to me.
I understand. I think it still comes back to priorities. We're saying that
That
the
may
high
be your
school,
argument, and
the
that's
field
valid.
turf, all of these other things are just more important. I mean, I disagree with that, but that's what it sounds like we're saying. I don't think we can go around the table and say, we all support universal kindergarten, and then say, but we'd like to do these 10 other things first.
Well, I
Well,
don't think that's
we already
true. I think what we need to get to right now is, what do you want to allocate this year in the FY20 budget for free day K?
Right, but the less we allocate, the less chance it actually happens, because it takes longer to actually.
Well, that, again, it kind of goes back to something you said at an earlier meeting, which was, the state's gonna force us to do this. Well, we could think that, but I can tell you the state's gonna force us to pay our retiree health. We already know that,
This is not
those are on
either
the
or.
books.
It's not either or though, we can do both. I mean, we put
We can do both.
$100,000 allocation into OPEB already this year in the budget.
We put, so, yeah, and as a percentage, I don't know, that's where my priority is.
I understand it's low, but there are educational benefits to moving to K, and I'm not gonna rehash that. But to know that we're just gonna put money aside at what to me feels like the expense of investing in our students, there's definitely a balance there, but this one to me feels like this is a tough one.
I'm gonna take issue with that, and then we can close this out, because I don't wanna get frustrated any more than I already am. But that statement of investing in our students, I think is offensive to the whole committee. because we have everything we do, everything these people dedicate their lives to, every program we have, the robotics, that carrying the English program from year over year over year with all the stuff that you've done, and mathematics is all about investing in our students. So that's not fair. That's not fair.
I wasn't trying to imply or state that at all. I was just saying.
But that's what you said, so it's okay, we get your point. Your point is, your priority is this, that's okay, but don't take it out on the rest of the programs. Steve?
We have full-day K now. The issue we're talking about is whether we are going to absorb the total cost of that, or whether it is going to be a shared cost between the school committee or the school committee budget and the parents who are getting the advantage of the program.
I think we passed that, right?
But that's the basic argument we're having here. In reality, because we already do have all-day K. But it's not free all-day K.
Right.
So don't tell me that we're missing out on educating the younger kids because we're not offering it at all, but we are offering it. And we're offering it, but we're offering it where the cost of the program is shared between the school district and the parents who are having the advantage of the program.
Well, the model would change though.
But that's the basic issue here.
So, at this point, somebody might as well just throw a motion on the table.
I was gonna say, can I throw a number out?
Go ahead.
Off the top of my head, 100,000 for OPEB, 200,000 for K.
I would second that.
But that's only for this year.
Yeah,
How many
do we need
years
a
are we
motion?
gonna?
No, you can't, we can't commit future committees.
Because the 300,000's gone.
Yeah, I know.
And then
So
so
now
zero
it comes out of
allocation,
the budget
the-
next year.
Correct. The superintendent's original plan had an allocation for next year's budget, which is why we needed to do this
That's
conversation now.
that's what she's talking about. For FY20, right?
Yeah, but is it, am I misremembering?
No, so it kind of goes back really to what Kathy said originally, was in a perfect, and again, in a perfect world, I know that we're not in a perfect world, but 300,000, what we were originally looking for is splitting that 600,000 down the middle, right? 300,000 from these other accounts, the two revolving accounts, and then the 300,000 because you're still short $300,000 to get to that full 600. So how do you find that? And again, I'm not wed to anything, but I was saying, is that something we put in the budget line? Like, we don't have anything in the budget line right now at all. And so I was waiting for this discussion to finally wrap up and decide, do we do anything for the budget this year or not? What I'm hearing is no, but then that leaves us, the longer we go, for, okay, then how are we gonna come up with the other 300,000? Because that's still an issue for us. We have the first 300,000, but somehow, in all of this, we have to find out where the other 300,000 is coming
No, I mean,
from.
I would add another 100,000 per year if I was gonna map it out. I would prefer to see it in 3 years, but I don't think we can do it and still also set aside money for OPEB, honestly, but. So I'll add that on, sorry, the 100,000 into the next budget.
If we are using money that isn't in this budget, but that is in these revolving accounts, and what we have is approximately $300,000.
Right.
And we took, so it's not, it doesn't impact the budget numbers this
It
year.
does not.
And again, I mean, looking forward to next year, is there any reason why we wouldn't earmark budget money for the K gap year as we allocate money for, say, OPEB?
No, that's exactly what my suggestion was in the first
Right.
meeting.
And
Yeah.
so I think that and I was gonna say before, I've been looking at those revolving accounts with money in them, and that's not the only one, and I think some of the other ones got resolved. So to see them go to a good use like this, I think is really good. But if this is our plan moving forward, then why wouldn't we budget for it starting FY21 the same way when we knew we were going to adopt a new math program, that we would put that in the budget?
But we can't commit.
No, I'm just saying we start. we've got that money this year, we put it someplace, we come up, you know, every year we talk about budget priorities.
Right.
The superintendent talks about the budget drivers. And again, this is a program.
So
We
then you
invest-
guys can need to keep it on front and center this time next year as a budget priority for FY '21, right?
So is that what you're saying, really, that we would put 200,000, Kathy, I just wanna make sure that that's what you're thinking. So between Lisa and Kathy, so you'd say we would take 200 of that 300,000
Mhm.
and basically put it in the vehicle that we talked about from the auditors, which
Mhm.
would be that K line now,
Mhm.
and have that $200,000 sit there,
Mhm.
and take that other $100,000 and ultimately put it towards,
Something else,
something
maybe.
else, or
Maybe in a
OPEB or
stabilization,
whatever.
I mean, we've already put in $100,000 in OPEB in this budget, correct?
Right.
So you've got another 100,000, there are other priorities, we have nothing in our stabilization accounts for the rug, right?
For the field, the track and field? No, we've got money in there,
money
we've
in
got
the
money
budget
there.
for that.
Well, if
Could we
there are
put
other
some just
priorities
leach
to
field?
look at, yeah, to
Put it on
move it
the
around,
field
but
And then save the towns a little bit?
Oh, you mean take out a smaller, bond?
Yeah.
Low, on, whatever.
I'm gonna go back to though, just should keep us in mind, keep in mind though, and to your point, next year we would have to have this discussion again.
Mhm.
But what I'm sensing though is that there's not a commitment right now on a time frame. Is that what I'm picking up, or no?
I mean,
I think
for
you-
me, I was intending at that with my quick math off the top of my head, 4 years. If we
Right.
start with 200 this year, 100 into FY '20, and then, you know, because then that gives us the 4 years to get the extra 400,000.
Okay.
And as much as I would prefer to see it in 2 or 3, I just don't, I would feel fiscally irresponsible.
It's a tough, this is tough, this is tough discussion, but I appreciate the richness of the discussion
I
tonight.
think this is, I don't know that this is, I mean, this is, it has to be had. I think we've come light years to get to this point, like, we're finally talking about this. I mean, it's, yeah, Mike.
When we set that money aside, like so Elise said, 200 towards the program and then 100 towards whatever else we decide. That money, there's this feeling or this fear that we might say, well, we take it back, or we're not really interested. How secure is that money when we take that 200?
It's not.
It's not.
So
It's not, because it'll sit in
Unless
a
you put it
revolving
into a
fund.
stabilization.
I was just gonna say,
Right.
could we put it into a stabilization fund so it's dedicated and there's no takebacks?
Well, that's something that we'd had that discussion as well. Is that a possibility for us to establish a stabilization fund? Yes, that is a possibility.
Go ahead and do it. I mean, if it makes everybody, and might just give everybody comfort.
It's
You
it's
know?
almost just for a sense of security that money is not gonna be
Yeah.
taken and say, well, actually this came up.
Right.
If it's dedicated, it's dedicated.
Then in that case, how do you feel about Elise's proposal? Well, I'm not gonna say
Well,
that,
she
because if
made
it
the
fails,
motion.
it's gonna make you feel bad. How do you feel about
I'm not wedded to it.
200 and then 100 into OPEB or something else?
Are you asking me or everyone?
I'm asking you.
I like that. I would do
Kathy?
that.
I would, since we have money budgeted for OPEB, I would look at some of the other, maybe the other stabilization funds that we've established and look at that, other $100,000 for that.
Or we might wanna just hang on to that 100,000 right now, because in light, I'm just thinking because of the SOI, feasibility study, do we not do anything, just leave it sit where it is right now? I like the idea of moving the 200 into stabilization or whatever, I think that's a good approach. Sorry,
Wait a
Kathy.
minute, Kathy, I'm gonna go over here and then I'll come back.
Okay. You know, my song is OPEB for $43 million, and we probably got less than $500,000 in there right now, okay? We know that recently, within the last year, the state changed the rules, or the accounting people changed the rules on how we have to deal with OPEB. There's nothing that says they're not gonna change it again.
How did they change it?
And we have to be really, they could really slam us on that.
I think the other thing, Steve, is,
$43 million.
I think the other thing is, and I'm not banging the drum, but our towns, our member towns,
They have the same problem.
are well funded with OPEB because they made the commitments. all three of them made the commitment, and Lancaster got to where they got to because they got a big chunk of money and they plopped it into retiree health, so they don't have to freak about it all the time.
I heard a story today where some town announced that they will fully fund it.
Leominster.
That was Lancaster?
Leominster.
Oh, Leominster, yes.
Yep.
Leominster is fully, their OPEB fund is fully funded.
But their liability is like 9, I mean, it's all millions, but it's not 42, it was more like 9, but, you know, but they are.
It's relative. So, okay, so let's go back to the discussion at hand. Thank you for that. Does everybody else, Kathy?
If we were going to create a stabilization fund for our kindergarten gap year, would that have to be approved at town meeting? I think we did that last year. We had 2 stabilization funds approved.
Yeah, but do we need to really get into the minutia of that? I think like for this meeting, let's just decide, do you want to put a chunk of money into a stabilization fund and then give it to the administration to work through? Then they'll come back to us and we'll do the minutia on that.
So we
Right
have a
now,
motion and a second.
I think you don't have a motion, you have an idea.
No, she,
Oh, did she move?
Kathy
Kathy did,
seconded.
100, 200 is the motion.
Okay, so the motion is 200 into a stabilization fund for full day K and 100 to OPEB?
Mhm.
That's what
the-
she said,
The original
yeah.
motion was to allocate 100,000 to fund the OPEB and 200,000 to fund kindergarten out of the FY20 budget.
And that was seconded?
That's-
I second
Kathy?
that.
No, not out of the
FY
budget.
20, no.
Not out of the budget, that's
No,
the
no,
300,000.
No, that's within the budget now, it's the
All right,
300,000.
Within the budget.
Yeah.
Right, so that's, we're not adding to the budget at all.
If, I can get behind, but I'm on board. What?
It's not even budget.
I know it's not, but I mean, I would rather, because of the optics of it and the found money part of it, I mean, I would rather we did 100 to OPEB, 100 to Leachfield, and 100 to K, because that Leachfield at $500,000 is gonna hurt a lot of towns, and they're gonna take a vote on it, but nobody's gonna say no. But we have that, and we have the oil thing coming up, and the high school's right around the corner, that's gonna hurt.
Oh my God, Lynn Coletti just said she would put money towards free day K.
A third of it.
Well, a
But the
penny.
optics of it well,
Good
yeah.
job.
Well, there's 2 sides of it, yeah, it's.
Don't we have to vote on this motion first?
Yeah, we do, but we can have the discussion now before we do.
Right.
All right.
So this motion doesn't include anything in the FY20 budget, is that, am I
It's
correct
just
in
the
that?
300,000.
Just the 300, we're just talking about.
Right, but then we would potentially have a second discussion about whether we're including anything in the 20 budget, because that was also something that we sort of talked about.
What? No, we're talking about FY20.
No.
No, yes.
She wants to
Yes,
increase
we
the
are.
budget.
What are you, what?
No, there's confusion, because the money that is in the revolving account is the $300,000 that we're talking about. That money is in the budget, but not in the new FY20 budget,
But it would be allocated through the FY20 budget.
I guess.
But we're not increasing
But
the
not
dollar,
increase,
right?
it would not
It would
increase
not increase the budget.
It won't,
Yeah.
It doesn't impact the bottom
Doesn't
line.
impact the budget at all.
So it's 2 separate conversations. It's
Yeah,
like,
this
what do
is
we wanna
the
do with this
thing.
300,000?
Money's
And
already-
then,
Are you
it's
gonna-
already there, and then are we
Are you going to
committing
allocate
to do-
anything?
right.
Oh,
from
no.
the budget?
At least once
No,
to
I
increase
can't
the
get
budget.
behind another.
Well, that's fine, but that's
Yeah.
a different
Okay,
discussion.
all right.
Right, so
Woo!
that's why I wanted to make sure what we're voting, people aren't like, wait, am I voting on
An
adding to the
additional
budget,
ask.
This is
or
revolving,
No,
this is just for this?
just revolving.
Okay. Okay, ugh. So, is everybody ready to vote?
What is the motion?
The motion is $200,000 of the existing budget.
Of the
FY19.
It's not
Of
a
the
budget.
revolving
It's
fund.
called a
Revolving
account.
Revolving,
accounts.
revolving accounts.
Yeah.
Don't put any number in, don't put
It's not
any
the
year in
budget
there,
at all.
Lita.
Isn't that the existing budget?
No, it's,
No.
this is money they have, it's been sitting there for
It's
years.
revolving.
But it's in,
It's not in the budget.
No,
It's in a pot.
It's sitting in a bank somewhere.
oh, you,
They already have it. That's why it looks bad.
It's the pockets.
All right, so the motion is to.
Thanks, Alita.
Allocate $100,000 from revolving accounts to fund the OPEB, and $200,000 out of revolving funds to fund the full day kindergarten.
And a stabilization fund.
Well, you gotta vote on that second to set up a stabilization fund.
Okay.
Are we good? Oh, I'm scared.
So
All
is that
those-
motion right?
All, yeah,
That's the motion.
yep, all those in favor? All those opposed? Lynn, the motion passes. Okay,
Now we can
Good
do
job.
stabilization fund.
so,
now we vote
yeah.
to make a motion to set
To-
the stabilization, okay.
right.
I'll move that. I move that we
Make it-
set up a
make it happen, sister.
stabilization fund, for funding full day K.
Second.
all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes, Lynn opposed.
Now, you're gonna hate me, but
Never.
No way, no way.
if we're committing to full day K and we're saying we're gonna put $200,000 in, we have to have the conversation about whether we're going to commit to any money in FY '20 to put into that
In the
account.
budget, that's correct.
In the budget, yes. And I would say that we should.
Okay, make a motion.
Make a motion.
Oh my God. I move. I don't know, do you just
Notice
want
her
me to,
name
I'm
is
just gonna
all
be
over
the,
this.
Well,
the
Her
punching
name's
bag.
on everything
Right,
here.
it's all right,
Happy
it's
on
all
that.
right, it's all
My name's on
right.
everything.
She's
Let her
trying to
move
reduce
it.
the
Let her
budget by
make a motion.
$100,000. Go for it.
I move that we put $100,000 into full day K in the FY '20 budget to go into the soon-to-be created stabilization fund.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Steve, any comments, questions? Kathy?
If we are going to add any money from this budget, it should come, my opinion is that it should come from any additional reductions that we make. So when we continue on our discussion, if there are further reductions, no matter what that amount is, then it would be my idea, my thought, that that would be the amount that we would add to that from this budget. So
Okay.
the bottom line stays the same.
Caitlin?
In the beginning of the conversation, Brooke said that she had to reduce the budget because she was working on reducing the budget by $100,000, and we just added another $100,000. Your job would be incredibly difficult. What would be your recommendation?
Anybody else have any other comments?
No, it's a good question. Does the administration have a opinion? Not that we
Again,
have to follow it.
I was gonna say, at the end of the day, my job is to do what you tell me to do in terms of this kind of thing. If you tell me that it's 50,000 or 100,000 or 10,000 or whatever, then we've gotta go back and we have to figure that, our job is to figure that out, how that comes to be. Is it going to be a challenge? Yes, it is. But that's my job, so I mean, but I will also say, I thought all along, although we don't have anything in the budget line, that if we're gonna get to the 600,000, at some point in time, if it's not this year, next year, you're gonna have to, that's why I went back after your point. So how many years are you gonna play this out? Because at some point in time, and that's why I said, do you have a time frame on this? Because you're gonna have to back it up and say, back into that date and say, okay, we need 200,000 a year for the next couple of years, or 100,000 a year, or 50,000 over 6, or what is it that you want? Because the 300,000 was half. Now as a result of tonight, you've taken that to 200. That means it's gonna be 400,000. So now you have, like, you know that that's what the game is, like the 400,000 has to be allocated in some form or another through your regular appropriations now, over how many years? So I mean, that's where you're sitting at now.
Somebody
Whatever
else
that looks
raised
like.
their hand. I don't remember who it was. Mike?
Well, I know that it's 8:08, but we still have further discussions about the budget.
Yeah, we do.
Right?
Yeah,
So
we
maybe
do.
that could answer some of our questions.
So there's a motion on the floor.
To allocate $100,000 of the FY '20 budget to be put into the stabilization fund for full day kindergarten.
All those in favor? Elise, Mike, Elaine, Steve. All those opposed? The motion passed.
Oh, boy. So how's that gonna cut into the services?
It passed.
For current services.
Okay, we're moving on, guys, because that's over and done with. Let's talk about the FY '20 budget. And a couple of things I want to address. One is we're going to ask superintendent to talk about the dean of students, but I want to get to this quicker rather than not, out of respect for folks who are here. We received a question on the legal line item, and Pat, can you remind me what is our legal allocation? It's 150 this year.
I think it's 100, it's up to 100.
So I think it was 60 last year, wasn't it? For this, the current cycle was.
That could be, I'd have to go back and look at it.
And I think it's important that we don't need to get into it now, but the superintendent can speak to what the typical legal fees are in a district. I mean, there's
Almost daily.
a lot of different things that are, but our legal line item has gone up over the past couple of years. And if you have been looking at our agendas, you will see that our legal line item has gone up. In a discussion earlier today, I had received some advice on the fact that of all the different legal expenses that a district can face, litigation is by far the most expensive. It's the most intensive. And if you've been looking at our district, at our school committee agendas over the past 2 years, you will see a trend. We have had more litigation brought against the school district, generally by the same person. So when you look at our agendas and you see executive session, and it says, for instance, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, we have to name the person who's taken litigation against the district. That person's name is on here. That person's name's been on several of them. We don't know how much and when the district is going to find itself in this situation. What I can tell you is that and I want to make sure I get this right because I want to make sure the advice I got I'm following. We have a former employee who's been very active. To date, the former employee has filed in Worcester Superior Court. All of those documents are public documents. You can go and find all of those documents. And to date, the court has determined that the district has done nothing wrong. And in fact, they said that the district has acted in good faith, which is quite the compliment. So I think I don't have the total dollar amount of the series within this particular litigation. But if you so needed it or wanted it, you could certainly ask for that and do it through a public records request with the administration. And at this point, there is additional litigation, and we can't really talk about the details. But I just want you to know that if you follow our school committee agendas, you will see a consistent thread, and the district has not done anything wrong, and in fact, the courts have supported the district and said that the district has acted in good faith. So I appreciate the question. It's something that we have to deal with.
I would say too, beyond that, like that's probably one of the biggest chunks of our legal costs is that particular situation that has been ongoing. And if you take a look at tonight's agenda, you'll see that it's on there again tonight. So, but that's part of our life as a school district because you have things like that happen on occasion. It's not a regular thing, but it does happen on occasion. Other than that, you've got other costs, like regular costs, that things happen in you know, I don't wanna say anything in detail because it's gonna breach confidentiality of children. And so I can't even give you examples, but I would tell you that probably about I bet you every third day, something comes up that we have to seek legal counsel on. And it's not even just the obvious, to be honest with you, it's not even the, we have things like, families, you know, that are involved in the courts or DCF and all that kind of stuff. That kind of thing happens on a regular basis with us too. But we have more unique situations that arise, and we never make a move unless we have our legal counsel tell us what that looks like. But that isn't the bulk of the bulk of the legal costs right now are really attributed to the ongoing litigation with this one individual.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on. So I don't know, Alita, if we can bring up, and Pat, we'll just quickly talk through where we sit tonight, and we're gonna go through this quickly. I know it's getting late and we've got 2 executive sessions left to get through. But I think we'll just kind of go through and really hit, I'm not gonna review January or the February 13th. You can bring it up just incredibly quickly for the sake of refreshing. Yep. Just for the sake of refreshing.
It's tonight.
Just
Well done.
refreshing
Well
the,
played, by the way, well played.
The last budget, I think it is.
refreshing the memory, there we go, and here's the February 27th. Now, one of the things I want to point out, when it says other staff efficiencies, sometimes I want to be really clear on what that is, because I think, I don't want people to think, oh, they've cut staff. That's not what it is. For example, it could be things like we found out that our insurance will not be, cost us nearly as much, or in this case, like the dental health plan, it won't cost us nearly as much. Those are all attributed to staff. So when we talk about staff efficiencies, I want you to think broader than, oh, are those bodies? They're not bodies, okay? So that's kind of, if you go to the next page, Alita, please, that's where we were at, and we should have one more page, I think. There we are. So that's where we're at tonight. The 4.99% for Bolton, the 3.31 Stowe is the 0.01. And you heard me say tonight, and to Chairman Mosco's point, I still have 100,000 that I'm looking at having to cut. Now I have 200,000,
Yep.
And so that puts me in a little bit different spot. I know that we kept that third position in there, the Dean of Students, but quite frankly, that's probably the position that will be cut tomorrow morning, because we just can't carry it. So that's pretty much a short answer to, you know, a long, I'm sorry you had to wait so long for that answer this evening, but that's probably the position that's gonna be cut.
Great. Oh, come back again.
And in all fairness, Principal DiDomenico and I have had this communication. This is not a surprise to him. We knew, but we get to a point in our budget process, especially leading up to school committee meetings, where we have to cut it off. Like we don't work on, still cutting things until tonight, like at 5 o'clock. We cut it off around Thursday before, so that by Friday, we know what we're doing and we can do everything and generate that out. With that said though, we already are talking and saying, okay, what are the next cuts going to be, but we don't make any changes for tonight. What you see is what you get tonight. But tomorrow morning, we will start again after the next 200,000, and that first 100,000 will be that Dean of Students. So what we will have to deal with now tomorrow is another 100,000 and figure out where that's going to come from. So
What else?
that's quick.
What other questions or concerns in the budget do you guys have? Yeah.
I had questions about staffing when I was
I'm
sitting
in your
on-
lap, sorry.
Not yet. I'll let you know. Working off the document that was getting out the last meeting in terms of the staffing requests.
Mm-hmm.
And then also looking at the document that you sent out about class sizes and indicating those with 12 and under, 13 to 20, 21 to 25, and then 26 and over. A couple of questions. There are 11 physical education classes that have 12 and under. Are any of those adaptive physical education? Would that explain the low numbers?
Yes, and actually, that's one of the reasons Principal G. Domenico is here right through tonight, in case you have those kinds of questions. And some I'll be able to answer, others he'll be able to. But the answer is yes to that.
Okay.
And the other thing I would mention too is that sometimes in a cycle, when you're moving from one cycle to the next, you can't get all of your students in one class, and that will spill over, and sometimes that goes into a smaller
Sure.
class.
Sure.
So I just wanna make sure that when we look at that, it's not just, oh my gosh, we've got all these classes with like less than, some of them are purposeful. Other areas where that hasn't been, we've been dealing with, as you well know, so.
The other question I had, and I don't know if it was something that you had projected up earlier, but in addition to the assistant principal, dean of students, at the high school, there was an additional science teacher, is that correct?
That's right, that's still on there right now.
Okay, so under foreign language, you have 13 classes with 26 students and over, and of the core academic areas, that's the largest. And there was a request for a .6 Spanish teacher. So I'm curious as to why foreign language has that many
Kids and, yeah.
kids in those classes, and why wouldn't you be adding the .6 Spanish?
Let me take a stab at this, please. I think that we've had this conversation already, and we've had some staffing changes that we think will remediate that.
Okay.
Is that a politically correct way of saying that?
Well, will those numbers come down?
You'll see, I think you'll see some changes with that next year.
But let me just be obnoxious about it. Are we
I
gonna
really
have-
wanna be careful because this is personnel.
I don't care, no, I'm not asking you for that.
Okay.
26 kids, 13 sections of 26 kids in a foreign language is excessive. So you might have a little bit, but can you say your aim is for 20 kids in a foreign language class? I mean, what's the problem? You're looking like, Elaine, what's wrong?
No, I'm doing the math in my head,
Ah.
that's what I look like.
I'm like, she looks like she's in pain.
I don't know that we can ever say that we can hit that type of a number, because it really depends on the number of kids enrolled in courses from one semester to the next. So I think that would be foolhardy for us to say.
Is
that
this
we've
a
got
trend, or is this an anomaly?
Well, it's a result in part of both programmatic and staffing changes that occurred at the end of last year. And, moving forward, it's hard to, really can't answer that question. We've got to look at what the student signups are. We're in the middle of that right now. So, midway through March, we'll have an idea of what those numbers are. But, at the end of last year, as you recall, we began to phase out the very low enrollment in our Latin program, and there was also a Spanish teacher who left and was not replaced. So those two things.
So this is where it stands now in March of 2019, and so after usually October 1st, when the dust settles, we'll see another.
You could see another iteration at that
would
point
be
in
good to
time.
know. It's just unusual. I mean, it used to be that math and English had those high numbers. Science has 29 sections with between 21 and 25, and I know that the science teachers like to, especially for the lab sciences, and I don't know if that's the case, if there are lab sciences that have 25 kids in them.
I don't know.
That's the top number that we want to enroll in a lab science class would be 25.
Right, but in terms of the lab setups, I mean, what are so you would have 6 tables with 4 kids, the lab tables, unless they're doing something different now.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can do that math with you right now, Kathy.
Well, no,
but
I'm
talking
just
with my
trying to work
science
it in my
department
head.
chair, That's the top.
But it's
number that we want
a
to set.
concern that the foreign languages, but if it's a result of, so you don't feel the need to add a staff member then for foreign language, what happened to that .6?
Well, I think as Superintendent Clenchey said, we're working on that, and it's hard to state with any certainty, but I think as she diplomatically said earlier, there are some things, some wheels that are in motion. I mean,
Okay.
that's a concern. I mean, certainly, I won't sit here and say it's not something I wanna watch, and I wanna bring that number down. I think what we've tried to do is get, over the past year, we've been successful in kind of moving more classes towards that sweet spot.
Okay.
21 to mid to low 20s. And that's what we'll continue to kind of keep our eye on.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing, I just want to advocate for keeping the .4 admin for the Hale Middle School.
That's still on right now.
It's still.
Tonight. Do you have some feelings on that?
I have some.
I don't know, she had a face too.
Well,
Everybody's got faces tonight, we all have faces.
If you look at parity, and I think that and I agree with the changes that were made at Luther Burbank. And it gets to a point where the issues, there are X number of kids that you have, the issues are the same. You still need help with the supervision evaluation process. You have a child that needs a lot of attention and you don't have an assistant. And the other thing is that the principal, I think, is this his third year? I think the first 2 years, second year.
Year, I think.
It's
He's
the
only been
second,
here 2
right?
years? He's doing such a good job. But he would come forward and say, I'm a new guy, I don't know what I need, blah, blah, blah. Well, now he's telling us something that he needs, and we have added administrative support, certainly at the high school. I know they feel they're down one, but we hired assistant superintendent, we have department chairs, we have the K-12 curriculum people, and before we knew we were going to have an assistant superintendent, we hired a curriculum person as an assistant at the high school. So there are all these layers, and there's only one school that doesn't have support, and it's .4. So I want to advocate strongly that remain. And I think that's all I have.
Yeah.
Just say,
Oh, please.
So you're right, and the evaluation piece, supervision and evaluation piece, in fact, everything you said is exactly what he said to me behind the scenes. These are my problem areas. That's why I actually put it back on, because I think I took it off 2 meetings ago, but I put it back on.
I have a question that's unrelated to this, but related to an earlier part of the discussion that Steve brought up. The replacement carpet for the field. Has there been an allocation to that this year?
Last year, you mean at the end of last year?
For this budget
This year.
cycle?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
So, in this planning right now, we are making a new allocation?
Yes.
What is it? I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Thank you for looking that up.
Yes, it would be the
Yeah,
facilities line.
facilities.
But it's its own thing.
Yeah, we'll go into the stabilization fund. In the meantime, thanks Pat for looking that up, for pooking that up. Elise, I'm sorry. It's late. I've been up since 4.
She just said 50,000.
Oh, good. That's great. Thank you.
Well, you could say that.
Well, when that sucker comes due in a couple of years, it's not gonna be a drop in the bucket.
I know.
Let's talk about quality. Okay, Elise.
I just wanted to.
No, that'll mess it up even more.
No, I spent my whole childhood on a basketball team with an Alice and an Elaine and an Alicia and an Elise. And I think that calls
see,
the
you're
right
used
name
to
ever,
it.
so I'm used to it. No, I just sort of as an aside, just because we are talking about class sizes and the need to hire new people, et cetera, and obviously that discussion is happening now, but will continue to happen. And I get that class sizes are like the most visible thing that everybody freaks out about, but there's almost no research that class sizes matter at high school. Like obviously if there's 50 kids in a class, that starts to matter, but when people have actually looked at and done economic analysis at higher levels, like high school, it's one of the least efficient things that you can do to spend your money on just saying, well, if we put another body in a classroom, that's gonna fix things.
Get that, assuming that the classroom physical
Right.
size can
Yes.
accommodate.
The
And I
physical
think
space.
that's more the issue that we have,
Yeah,
is
but
the
I just,
physical
you know,
size.
like, And so whenever I hear these arbitrary, not arbitrary, but like saying, well, can we get it all to 20 kids, and not to pick on Kathy, but because there isn't a magic number. And sometimes it may be more efficient with our dollars to expand a class, or, you know what I mean, or to create more personalized learning opportunities instead of just putting another physical body in the classroom. And I just want us to sort of like keep those things in mind, because I think it's easy for people, we get emails from parents that are like, why are the classes so big? And you need to do something about that. And it's not always the right answer, necessarily.
Except when
there's a,
when
obviously
there's a problem.
physical space.
Well,
that can't be
and
solved.
also it's dependent on the subject and the kids in the classroom and, right?
The dynamics.
Right,
Yeah.
Mike.
So two things, I'll speak to Lisa's point. I'm on the opposite end of that, where this research that I've gotten into says there's sort of a inverse U relationship, where if there's too few kids, there's not enough academic momentum, and if there's too many, then it becomes unruly. So there is sort of a sweet spot at around 21, 22, and anecdotally I can say that for me that's perfect. 21, 22 is perfect. But that's just me. What's that?
But for what age?
9th through 12th, secondary. And then to Kathy's point, and Paul, you can correct me, at the high school, science, math, English, and world language are all leveled, honors accelerated, and college prep.
Yeah, with AP, obviously.
Okay, yeah. So it is important, again, to Kathy's point, that we understand that some of the college prep classes have a lower limit, is that right? So a lower, I don't know what the lower max number is at Neshoba.
Well, there's nothing in print, Mike,
Nothing concrete,
but
but
certainly
it's a
when
great
we're
point.
scheduling, we're trying to, you're scheduling those for, it might be 2, 3 kids less than, an honors class or something.
Right. So when we look at numbers that are 12 and under, classes that are 12 and under, some of those class sizes are intentionally reduced, right,
Yes.
to the benefit of the kids.
Yes.
So in some ways, it would be better to be able to parse out which of these are intentionally lower and which of these are just underpopulated.
Mm-hmm.
If
I know, I totally agree.
And to that, to elaborate on that point a little bit, Mike, yes, several of those classes are purposefully kept at a low enrollment for the reasons you just mentioned. Others represent the pinnacle of that particular course of study. So you might have a student who chooses to stay enrolled in a course of study even when they don't have to meet requirements, because they're saying, I love this. And we want to be able to offer those opportunities to kids to study whatever it is their passion is at that top level.
All right, are we good? Where are we?
Well, I think we're done with the budget now.
Okay.
Let's
I have
just
one more
stop
question,
that.
sorry.
Let's go.
What's that?
I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Don't be
It's sticking in my
sorry.
head for like 2 weeks, I have to bring it up. The leaching field oil tank financing, we were gonna do with a bond, a 10-year bond, right?
That's what I'd like you to do.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say it, let me just get it all out, and then I'm sure you'll respond. It seems to me that using money from, to fund something like this, an unexpected cost like this, is, again, if I'm wrong, let me know, an ideal expense for E&D. Now, I know that you wanna build E&D back up to a particular level, I think you said 2.5?
No, I don't think that we said that, no.
Wasn't that, okay.
But that's okay.
Whatever it was. But from my perspective, we're either building up E&D so that we can eventually spend and feel comfortable, or we're spending now on the things that we would have spent anyway, and then building it up. So I guess my question is, why aren't we thinking about pulling from E&D to reduce that bond?
That's something that you can consider doing. It always makes me, I think, right now, until we get off this E&D wheel that we're on right now for a budget, where we're having to draw down money every year to put, when I say draw down, draw out of E&D to put in our budget. Like right now, we've got, I think, 700,000 right now. No, I'm pretty quite positive that that's where we're at.
E&D?
Yeah, no, that we've taken from E&D to put into help fund this year's budget. Remember, every year, we're trying to get that down, right? And I was
700.
hoping, how much is it?
700.
700, that's what I thought. And, we were hoping in a 3 to 5 year period, we could be down to 0 or close to 0, maybe only doing a 200,000 or something like that. it's frustrating for me because we started, we were hoping we could even be less than the 700,000 this year, but it's just not gonna happen. Until we get off that wheel, I'm honestly not comfortable, right? I mean, that's something you could certainly consider, but right now, I don't feel comfortable in doing that just yet. I mean, I certainly understand, and to your point, I wanna be there, but right now, we have to take part of that money to help keep that budget working every year.
But I think, I'm gonna play devil's advocate on this, I think Mike's onto something, because that is what E&D is for, right? Is extraordinary, unexpected.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing.
No, I know you're not, but
But keep in mind that you're already
I know.
drawing down 700,000 from that account.
I
Just
know,
right
I
out of the
totally
gates.
get it, but I think, Mike, I think we're in a wicked, weird situation now. If we weren't in this horrible situation, I'd be with you going, why are we doing this? Let's just pay it, but we do need some cash reserves.
And I guess from my end, well, this is gonna sound Pollyanna, so just bear with me. From my lens, I know that we're looking at taking this out over the 10-year period, but certainly Pat and I've said, look, can we take out this loan and pay it down faster? Do you know what I mean? So if we think like you're thinking, in another 2 years or 3 years, if we've got what we're drawing out of that E&D and putting into the budget every year, if we've got that down to the 300 mark, I'm not even gonna blink if there's still like 1.2 million sitting in that account. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then we look and say, you know what, we can now pay this off. We'll be stabilized enough, and I'll feel very comfortable. I'm just not comfortable right now, but I'm just, again, it's your decision, but I would tell you always have to keep that in the back of your mind.
But would you do that for the others? Like, we're still paying off the field, we're still paying off the capital expense for the high school, we're still paying off we still have a lot of capital expenses at the high
Or
school.
look at paying off the higher
Well, I mean,
interest rate.
I understand what you're saying,
loan.
but
Yeah.
to put it that way, I mean, why would you pay that one off first?
No, you're absolutely, no, but that, again, that's not a
We have a lot
Brooke
of
thing,
money.
that's not a superintendent thing, that's just a decision for the
Yeah.
school committee. But it goes back to the point, and exactly what Trevor Morosko just said.
But
you know.
but they need to know that, were we gonna get a list of all the capital expenses that we're paying at one point? Cause we still have a lot of bonds out there.
The towns pay the capital expenses on the buildings, except for the high school.
At the high school, but we give you that regularly, we tell you that once per month.
All right, I have a question for you guys. The next thing on the agenda, given the fact that we have 2 executive sessions tonight, how do you feel about moving the school year calendar discussion to the next meeting? Are you okay with that?
I am. How much do you have in this meeting?
Thank you. I think we're okay for the
I
next
think
one.
we should be
Yeah, I
fine.
think the budget is the only thing that's on it.
Yeah.
All right, so,
Because we've gotten so many emails about it, can we put forth questions? I've sent them all to you, Lorraine, everyone I've gotten. but-
yeah, and Alita has everything.
Yeah, I've gotten one just directly to.
Yes,
that I
you have.
forwarded to Lorraine.
Yes, you have.
Because there are a couple questions that, I would like to just have somebody answer, just so I can
Sure.
vote next meeting.
Oh, so.
So can we funnel them to you and to?
Sure.
Just people that have asked me and I don't.
What are the
know answer.
questions? Maybe we can do this.
In particular, I've heard from a few teachers who have said that this wasn't something they wanted necessarily. Very few, like 1 or 2. But one in particular, and a teacher who is a teacher at the high school who said, oh, you know what, a lot of the high school teachers wouldn't like this, switching to the Wednesdays. And so I just want to get a sense for, but then I've also heard from other teachers that yes, we do want, so and I know that it's going to be like that with everybody, there's always going to be people who are for and against, there's always going to be parents that are fine with it and parents that aren't. But I just wanted a sense for, is this something that sort of is coming from mostly the elementary school teachers and the middle school and the high school less so? Is it kind of been a plurality that there's, most teachers are into it?
That's probably more an Anne Marie thing, to be honest with you.
At least it's on fire. That Lacey over there, she's moving and shaking.
Trying to be responsive.
I'm impressive with you. I'm impressive with you. I'm tired.
To make it,
Yeah.
we've got 5 educators on the committee, and we've got 3 parents, and then we've got 4 or 5 administrators. And the theory is that each of those people would come to the meeting with the thoughts of their constituents, you know, bring forward the thoughts of their constituents. So really, they're representatives of the people that they talk to. So we can only assume, you know, that
Right.
what we're hearing, you know, is representative of the committee.
But
And
you
you're
haven't
right,
been getting
they
lots
have-
of angry emails from teachers being like, what?
No.
We haven't gotten any.
None.
No, and like I said, it's been only a couple of people, and so I couldn't tell because it's almost split 50-50. It's like,
Yeah. And you always have to keep in mind, we have, what, 600 employees?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
yeah, and so everybody's gonna have a slightly different.
So.
Okay.
So
That's helpful.
Kathy's gonna assume here.
Yep, so, we will vote on the school calendar, but we'll bring forward questions that, through Lorraine, that Brooke
Yeah,
can
we can
answer and
provide.
Anne Marie can answer.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. The only subcommittee report is for budget and warrant,
We
Mr.
did not
Rubenstein.
meet, we did not meet.
Then there
the
is
day-
no
the day
report.
before.
Very good, okay. The consent agenda, does anybody have any additions, corrections? And the warrants went around, did everyone have an opportunity to sign?
Steve, you need these?
Okay, so then the items to be considered for the next agenda, we added a evaluation workshop from 5 to 6 on 3/27. From March 13th, we added the vote on the calendar. Was there anything else?
Nope, that's the only thing on the planning calendar.
Okay,
It's just that in the budget. Final
okay.
vote.
Because you have to take the final vote.
Oh, yes,
Vote.
okay, yeah. All right, so then we have, okay, so we need to, make a, not sure how this works, we need to make a motion, have a motion to,
Go into executive session.
to go into executive session. So, and who's going to be included in?
That's not the one, I think that
That's
there's
not the
another
one?
sheet here.
Right.
Here it is.
Okay. So the people that are included, yes, okay. So Lynn, would you make the motion?
Move to go into executive session at 8:40 PM pursuant to MGL C30A 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Specifically, the litigation matter of George P. King Jr. versus Patricia Marone, docket number 1885 CV 00643. And pursuant to MGL C30A Section 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Unit C evaluation tool review. Executive session to include Superintendent Clenchey, Assistant Superintendent McGuire, Business Manager Pat Marone, and Director of Human Resources Anne Marie Stoica. Committee will adjourn in executive session.
Okay, can I have a second? Second. Roll call? Do I do the roll?
Yes, you do the
Elaine?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kathy, yes. Lynn? Elise?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you, good night.